Part 118. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1189. Arc number 11. Overhead, dim light bulbs swayed from time to time, making the light and shadow in the narrow room jitter. In an old open biological battery survival cabin, Tang An suddenly jumped up from the curved cabin, his face full of shock. 5 other people were already standing in the iron house, which was about 20 square meters and the walls were covered with rust. One of them was old, stooped, using a cane, and had ugly scars on his face. This is the elder that Tang An referred to when he was talking to the woman before. The other 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, leaned coldly in the corner of the room, silent. The last woman among the 5 used a small computer. There were many exposed circuits and integrated boards on the computer panel, and it seemed to be assembled from patchwork parts. Many lines were separated from the computer and connected to the illegal port where Tang An lay down not long ago. The woman who was operating the computer was only 1.4 meters tall and thin. She wore tattered clothes that could barely cover her body and looked dry. Her name is Bella. Even though she looks like a minor, her age in the hallucination is already more than 30 years old. Her body cannot grow and develop normally due to long-term malnutrition, and she has been maintaining this gesture. Bella looked at the black smoke-emitting computer in shock. She looked back at Tang An, who was also lying on the illegal port with a confused look on his face. "How did you get out?" Bella had a puzzled expression. I'm out." He vaguely remembered the memory before he left. Bella tells him high energy ahead. When he turned around, he saw a perverted predator whose smile made his scalp tingle. When the punch was struck, he felt nothing and only saw 404 filling the screen. Then, he logged out of phantom light. When Tang An told his terrible experience with a complicated expression, everyone else in the room quickly shook their heads, indicating that it was impossible. In other words, he was actually knocked offline by a predator? How can this be? Humph. In the room, a muscular black man with tattoos sneered, "Shabai, if what you said is true, wouldn't they be able to climb into the ark along the lines? You are insulting us." "IQ, Tang. What you are about to say is true. I immediately drank the expired nutrient solution in your room, and drank it while standing upside down. Stop arguing." In the room, the old man who had been silent and the elder of Arc number 11 used his hoarse voice to stop the quarrel between Tang An and the black man. His cloudy eyes looked at Tang An. "Come to my room and I'll ask you," cough, cough, cough. After the elder finished speaking, he coughed violently. Another woman hurriedly stepped forward and patted the elder on the back. "Bella, can we find any abnormal information in the records when Tang An logged out?" Bella shook the computer, which was still smoking and the screen had been shut down for a long time, and shrugged, "I'll try my best." At the same time, in the virtual world phantom light, St. Peter's Street, in front of the broken bridge. Yilin frowned and looked at his fist. He just gave it a try, but he felt like he had touched something. Yilin would not think that the strange touch he encountered when punching was an illusion. There are not so many illusions in the world. He believed that under Neil's guidance, he had just tried to send the awakened one out of the virtual world. When punching, Yilin added a little infinite authority to his fist, and used the teleportation technique in the supreme style to, after being highly simplified, a strange punch was delivered. The barrier between virtuality and reality. Yilin didn't expect that she really succeeded. He really had the idea just now that if he didn't succeed, others would be successful. It's not bad to try. Younger brother. Neil crashed, and the intelligence came back online. The conflict between several running priorities caused her running logic to briefly crash for 3 seconds. But at this critical moment, after Yilin rushed out, Neil chose a compromise operation method, that is, not to operate. Sure enough, After not running, after waiting for a while, when Yulin solved everything, Neil found that his logic was normal again. This is an unexpected surprise. It turns out it still works like this. Neil himself didn't expect it. After a few ups and downs in the air, Neil came to Yulin's side with clean movements, grabbed Yulin's ears and pulled her to the ground. St. Peter's Avenue was in ruins, with a deep ravine plowing the street into a sunken tunnel that stretched to the other side of the peninsula. Broken water pipes sprayed fountains over the ruins for free, and exposed wires emitted sparks in the stagnant water. Neil, who had always seemed emotionless, showed a rare angry expression after seeing what his brother had done. She took off her sunglasses and angrily pinched the left and right sides of Yulin's face with both hands. What did you do?" Yulin's face was stretched twice as long by Neil, and his mouth was stretched into a sausage shape. Yulin said innocently, "This is not what you said. Try to use the center to process the information in the phantom light, try to construct physical rules and calculate physical volume collisions, or something like that." Yulin crossed his hands and made complicated gestures. "I'm just trying to calculate the scene where a cannonball is dropped on the street, the power of the explosion is highly concentrated, and the street violence is separated from the middle, that's all. Open the maintenance area." Neil issued an application and snapped his fingers. With her as the center, the area Yulin destroyed was covered by an illusory stream of light. The swaying firelight, the floating black smoke, the spraying water, the panicked residents of the phantom light, all movement stopped abruptly in the light curtain. Subsequently, the remaining hunters crossed the broken bridge and entered the maintenance area, searching the ground for the remains of the awakened one. They seemed not to be surprised by the situation, or perhaps they had no emotions such as shock or surprise at all, and they faithfully carried out Neil's instructions. The hunter team searched the maintenance area for a while, and after finding nothing special, the operation was disbanded. Neil is off work, and the other hunters continue to monitor and maintain the restart work of the area. L-1010, log out of phantom light. The field of view switches, and under the supervision of her sister, Yulin logs out of the world of illusion. The first thing after logging out, Sister Alice took Yulin to the maintenance department for a comprehensive inspection without saying a word. The person responsible for inspecting Yulin was still Alice-101. Taking a lesson from the past, Alice did not dismantle Yulin's armor plate and look inside. Instead, she checked the old system on Yulin's chip. Of course, the chip Yulin embedded in the armor plate was not intelligent, so he could only use it secretly. Finally, Alice gave a past inspection report. A strict omnic, as long as it passes the inspection, she will no longer doubt it, but she revealed a feeling of joy. As for how Alice expressed delight, Yulin couldn't tell either. This is just what he thinks. Because the frequency of Alice's morning maintenance has obviously increased. It used to be once every 3 days. Since Yulin was allowed to log into the world of illusion, this frequency has become once a day. Now, Yulin can pull off the Alice type with her eyes closed. Yulin has been at work for more than a month. For more than a month, Yulin was just like ordinary office workers who clocked into work, logging into Huangguang with Alice, and Lin Yi and Neil were walking around like they were shopping. The world of phantom light is very beautiful. Yulin takes Neil and enjoys the delicious food in the phantom light. "What's this?" Neil asked. "Ice cream, strawberry flavor, try it." "This is food for humans." "You're Neil now, not Alice-101. That makes sense, seeing his younger brother smiling innocently and stuffing the ice cream cone into his mouth. Neil could only open his mouth obediently and take a bite. Neil frowned. "Is it tasty?" Yulin asked tentatively. "Beep beep beep." Neil rolled his tongue, his eyes lit up, and he began to analyze the taste on his tongue. Virtual ingredients: drinking water, milk, milk powder, synthetic vegetable oils, sugar, strawberry flavor, bisglyceryl fatty acid esters, xanthan gum, citric acid, carboxymetyl cellulose sodium, phenylalanine. She tasted more than a dozen food additives whose taste was impossible for humans to taste. No, no, no. Yilin slapped Neil on the face, making the latter's chest tremble. You're wrong, this isn't the taste. That's the flavor. Neil said stubbornly. In this way, I will teach you how to taste. Yilin recalled the structure and configuration of the Alice-type oral cavity, turn off the component analysis module, turn on the temperature sensor, and increase the tactile sensing module. Neil heard the instructions and followed them one by one. Then, close your eyes. Yilin's tone at this moment was like the grey wolf tricking the red wolf into opening the door. Only with your heart can you taste the taste. What is the heart? Close your eyes first. Neil closed it obediently. What does it feel like? Ice. Anything else? Soft. Anything else? Sweet. That's the flavor. Neil stuck out his tongue and licked the white cream on his lips, seeming to understand. Alice comes to Yilin's place every day for maintenance before going to work. Yilin skillfully disassembled the Alice-shaped armor plates and linings, and cleaned them carefully. When Yilin carefully opened the armor on the back of Alice's neck and observed the bug lying on Alice's center, she fell into deep thought. Hey, sister. Huh? Brother, isn't sister unclean inside? Alice asked worriedly. She didn't want her brother to see the dirt inside her. What a shame. Through words and deeds, Yilin gradually helped Alice understand many human concepts. Shame, worry, happiness, sadness, etc. Even if Alice cannot understand many concepts, she can at least simulate them through the personification module. Can I have an Alice model? Can't. Alice shook her head subconsciously and refused. A snowflake appeared inexplicably in her vision, but she quickly returned to normal. Brother, you can only dismantle Alice 101. No, 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 sister, you misunderstood. Yilin noticed Alice's reluctance and explained, I want a factory model that has not yet loaded any personification module. Oh, Alice understood, it turns out you want to be Alice. It turns out that what you like is Alice XO Alice. Alice -101 didn't know what information she associated with it. Her faceplate was hot and red, and gave off a burning smell. Yilin decided not to explain. But since it was an Alice blank machine without any anthropomorphic module, my sister readily agreed. In the concept of omnics, the ontology of omnics is intelligence, not machine. They regard the body as a part that can be discarded at any time once it gets old. This is fundamentally different from the human thinking model. In the concept of omnics, a blank Alice type is no different from new clothes. If you, brother, like to wear women's clothes, what if your sister agrees to it? Alice thinks this is what humans call pampering. The elder sister dotes on the younger brother. Then, you might as well be Alice. Alice thought happily. Looking forward to a happy life in the future where two Alices can be plugged in and charge each other in reverse directions. She didn't notice that after her brother finished speaking, he didn't speak anymore, and even his usual skilled maintenance skills were a little slower. In this universe, time is like rust on an armor plate, growing on it unknowingly and being worn away unknowingly. It has been 3 months since Yilin became a younger brother. A mysterious awakened one appears in the world of illusion. His name is L. Morning. It's always hazy. After the daily maintenance, Alice was polished and shiny. Moisten where it should be moistened, polish where it should be polished, and look stunning. The current Alice -101, standing together with other Alice types, can still see obvious newness. This is the difference between having someone take care of it and having no one take care of it. She habitually invites Yilin to log into Huangguang, go to eat delicious food, no, clock in and go to work. Yilin found the reason of need to upgrade the system version to refuse. Alice had no doubts and hurriedly logged into the world of illusion. After Alice left, Yulin took the time to sneak into the mine again. This month, apart from clocking into work, Yulin did nothing. He found the opportunity and infected all the patrol equipment in a certain area, turning them into his own machines. Now, as long as Yulin is not too arrogant, he opens the lid of the life-saving cabin and gets in. He can secretly log into the world of illusion as a resident without any patrolling omnics coming to disturb him. After being familiar with driving, Yulin arrived at the life-saving cabin of Road. Log into the virtual world Phantom Light. Becoming Road again, Yulin's mind briefly fell into a trance, and he loaded Road's memory. It turned out that during this period, Road's life had undergone earth-shaking changes. A month ago, Road blatantly contradicted his superiors and was taken into consideration by his superiors. Sure enough, a week later, he received a letter of dismissal as he wished. He lost his job. What made Rhodes even more unbelievable was that his wife seemed to have changed into a completely different person, acting mysteriously all day long and divorcing him at the speed of light. Now Rhodes is alone and drinking at home to drown his sorrows. On the table, the ashtray was filled to the brim with cigarette holders. There were many empty beer bottles scattered on the ground. In the kitchen, the dishes and chopsticks that hadn't been washed for several days, and the take-away food boxes placed all over the floor, exuded an unpleasant smell. Buzz buzz. Yulin snapped her fingers, used a few toothpicks to pin a few noisy flies to the wall, and then came to the mirror. There was a layer of dust on the mirror, and Yulin reached out to wipe it away. In the mirror, a face of a middle-aged man with stubble, sunken eye sockets, and desolation was reflected. There are still 12 hours and 8 minutes until Alice logs out. Yulin clocked a countdown on her watch, briefly washed her face and shaved, then left Luozai and walked onto the street. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1190. It was raining lightly on the street. Pedestrians held dark umbrellas. Seen from a high place, the dark umbrellas form a grid, regular and indifferent. Yulin entered an empty alley. Walk from this end to that end. The drizzle fell on him, as if there was an invisible curtain that separated it, revealing a hazy thin light. Step by step, Road walked forward in the rain, dragging out strips of light composed of small numbers 1 and 0 behind him. The light strips formed a white windbreaker style on Roads like a whirlwind. It looked so dazzling in the crowd. Road smiled slightly, pulled out his right hand in the void, and a wooden mask was generated out of thin air and put on his face. There is a strange symbol on the forehead of the mask. At first glance, it looks like an L. If you look closely, it looks like a 1, standing crookedly. Yulin conjured up an ordinary oil paper umbrella. White clothes, oil umbrella, drizzle. He passed by the ignorant residents of Huaguang. Every time he passed by someone, he would reach out with 2 fingers and tap the person's forehead with lightning speed. Benedict. Have a wonderful night. Go to sleep. Passers-by fell. Boom. White figures flickered strangely in every corner of the city. Everywhere they went, someone fell. Roadside. Inside the window. The TV screen on the shelf is reporting a piece of news. Recently, a strange mass syncope phenomenon occurred in M City. The news reporter was a beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes. She was lowering her head and reading the newsletter on the table while playing the news in an emotionless tone. Some experts said that this may be a probabilistic event caused by the recent seasonal changes and the weather being hot and cold. The cause may be vasoneurotic syncope. Since the first case of the disease, a total of 1,236 patients have appeared in multiple cities. Relevant experts say that vasoneurosyncopy is a transient functional disorder that will not leave any sequelae. However, if syncope occurs after recovery, gibbering or abnormal behavior, Please contact the relevant departments immediately and call the phone number XXXXX. There's a first time and there's a second time. Yulin has learned how to mass-produce awakened ones. Based on his current understanding of the power of Omnix and his experience as a nightmare knight, it is not difficult for a phantom light resident to accidentally open his eyes and take a look at the real world. And just as Yulin expected, the increase in awakened people made the Omnix aware of obvious abnormalities. If they were not stupid, they should have understood that someone was doing something secretly. It was only a matter of time before he was discovered. Yulin was thinking about one thing. Nemesis' reaction speed was much slower than he expected. Did he overestimate Nemesis before? Or is there something inside Nemesis that he cannot understand? The drizzle became heavier and heavier, and the big raindrops hit Yulin's umbrella as if they were going to kill someone. Yulin lowered his head, stared at the time on his watch, and began to count down. Count down to tens of seconds later. Not far away, a public phone box rang. Yulin stepped forward quickly and picked up the phone. Since you decided to connect with me, there is no need to talk nonsense. This call will only last 24 seconds. After 24 seconds, the hunter will detect where I am. Location and cordon off the area. Who are you? On the other side of the call is a woman named Bella. A week ago, they received an anonymous letter, saying that they had learned the location of Ark number 11 through Tang En. Yuren only sent a brief message. The airy words, "Miss, you don't want the location of the Ark to be discovered, right?" The opponent's defense was completely broken. As a last resort, Bella was arranged to negotiate with an anonymous mysterious man. "You were hunted by the hunters again." Bella's tone changed. "Where is your login terminal? With all due respect, I don't think it can be well preserved outside of the Ark illegal port." "What if it's legal?" Yulin smiled slightly, but glanced outside the 18 streets. A bright figure, like a jet, flew towards this direction at high speed in the air. Yulin closed his eyes. "Open and close your eyes." It took 3 seconds less than I thought. "We can't talk today. I'll visit you another day." "Huh?" Bella was startled by the other party's conversational style. "Bella, right," Yulin said the other person's name easily. "Goodbye." Wait, Bella said urgently. "Who are you?" "I am, L. Do. After several contacts, Yulin's purpose was just to get in touch with the other party, not really to discuss the important matter of anti-nirvana here. After many hesitations, the other party seemed to finally choose to believe in him. Knocking Tang En offline with one punch has proven his strength. Tisk, it's still a little late. Next. Boom. A familiar figure fell from the sky and landed suddenly in the middle of the street. Circles of shockwaves visible to the naked eye spread from the girl's feet to the surroundings, and cracks appeared on the surface of the building. The residents in the city suddenly stopped all movements, and the colors on their bodies seemed to be washed away by heavy rain, changing from color to black and white style. Breathing, heartbeat, everything stopped suddenly. Hey, new technology. Yulin looked at the short-haired sister standing 100 meters away, slowly pulling out a long knife from the void. Alice-101, anthropomorphic character, near. This is the fourth time Yulin stands opposite Neil as L. The first time Neil found the L it took 329 seconds. The second time, 225 seconds. The third time, 118 seconds. The fourth time, 21 seconds. Obviously, Neil's search engine is evolving. Once Yulin appears and makes some moves, Neil will focus on her and find her true location within 21 seconds. No. To be precise, it's not that Neil's search engine is evolving. Everything in this universe is under the control of Nemesis. It is not Neil who evolves, but Nemesis. When Yulin repeatedly disassembled Alice-101 for major maintenance, she observed the nano-worm lying on Alice's neck at close range and noticed this. The bug is getting fatter and fatter. Without any dialogue, Neil flicked his sword and slashed down in the direction of Yilin. The twisted light of the knife divided the street and the city into two halves. What was cut open by the knife was the distinct black and white space in front of us. There is no prologue, no special dialogue. Neil didn't know that the L who was secretly causing trouble in front of him had another identity as her good brother. The apparent hostile relationship made Neil have no intention of chatting with L. Neil was faithfully carrying out his mission. Command lines that do not involve brother will not cause basic logical conflicts. Now she is powerful, beautiful, courageous, and a perfect omnic. Laugh. The flowing knife light was as unpredictable as liquid. After splitting the phone booth where Yilin was, the phone booth was divided into two halves, and then turned into a broken data stream and disappeared from this alien space without a trace. Neil blocked all possible exits nearby. This time, she calculated all possible escape routes for L, and there was no way for him to escape. Beep beep beep. Under the silver hair, Neil's eyes flashed, and she was reading the data of L. But the perfect analysis was once again inaccurate. In the eyes of Omnics, the mysterious L is like a black hole, unable to read any useful feedback. After a few ups and downs, Yilin jumped up to the roof, looking down at Neil. The city has been completely sealed off, and there are a total of 560 hunters surrounding it. They are coming here from different directions. After smashing the phone booth with a knife, Neil used the knife again. The knife was fatal. The 100-meter-high building was cut into squares by Neil and suspended in the sky. Never mind. After several close encounters, Yilin dodged, as if teleporting, and flew a few kilometers away, and sighed softly, "No more fun." He pointed at Neil's cell phone and took out a palm-sized cell phone from his trouser pocket. Neil was stunned. Times have changed. Yilin smiled and pressed the off button on her phone, who said you can't log out without exiting. The next second, road, which was supporting Yilin's core data, fell from the suspended building fragments. Boom. It was smashed to pieces on the ground. Neil looked at Rhodes' corpse on the ground with a cold expression. After watching for a moment, she pressed her palm lightly to her ear and began to mechanically execute the next step of instructions: repair and restart the maintenance area. The weather is clear today, the haze is thin, and the star rings in outer space are looming. Yilin opened the window and stared at the star ring, lost in thought. In the past few days, the stars in outer space have become denser than before, like a large airtight net. It doesn't give people a gorgeous and wonderful feeling, but a kind of depression called nowhere to escape. Now, in Yilin's house. On the fixed frame, the caliper tightly clamps in Alice. This is a blank model that has not been loaded with any intelligence and is equivalent to a shell. It was shipped here directly from the factory, not even coated, with a pure metallic color. Sister, you should have guessed it. The reason why Neil reacted so quickly is that she probably locked the terminal that L invaded, which should be in the Morning Star mine. Otherwise, Alice-101 would not have appeared in the illusion world so quickly. While drinking the clarified and fresh engine oil, Yilin wore a mecha and sat by the window for 2 hours. Gradually, acid rain began to fall outside the house. The star ring is dimmed by haze and light pollution. Click, click, click. Brother, take care of yourself. Today, it was rare for Alice to open her energy suit for protection, allowing her body surface to withstand the corrosion of acid rain. When they arrived at the house, Yilin stroked Alice's armor plate distressedly. Look at you, the plating has been soaked off. Alice did not mention the hunt for L in the Phantom Light world not long ago, and obediently opened her arms in front of Yilin. Yilin skillfully removed Alice's armor plates, sanded, polished, removed rust, and oiled them. The humanoid skeleton under Alice's armor and the configuration inside the cabin are all exposed in front of Yilin. It looks a bit ferocious and terrifying, but in fact, generally unfamiliar omnics will not regard this unprepared picture. A candid stance. Whether you say trust is good or the level of trust is too high, this is a small cordiality between Alice-101 and L-1010. Under the bright light, the corrosion marks caused by Alice-101 being deliberately exposed to rain were completely removed by Yilin. When it was reinstalled, Alice-101 was restored to like new again. All right. Yilin patted Alice on the back and sent her out the door. Be careful from now on, sister. The acid rain was getting heavier and heavier, but Alice still didn't turn on the energy suit. Yilin could only get an umbrella from the door and hold it up for Alice. This umbrella was also a gift from Alice to her brother. Before leaving, Alice fell silent for the first time in a long time. Her eyes flickered, one bright and one dark. Yilin is very familiar with this. This is the performance of Alice type when logical operations get tangled. After a while, Alice spoke her mind. Brother is L. Hey. Yilin agreed, there was nothing she couldn't do. He is a bachelor in this universe, honest and upright. Why, Alice tilted her head, why do you want to resist the Supreme Council? She still seemed to stubbornly believe that her brother and she were from the same race, and the reason why he became L was because something went wrong. Maybe there was something wrong because he updated the system too many times. This is also a common failure of many omnics, officially called update disease. If something goes wrong with the update, it's not difficult to fix it. The first is to find system vulnerabilities, and the second is to roll back to an updated version and fix bugs with too high version numbers to solve them easily. Yilin smiled, actually, I wanted you to wake up at first, but later I found that this was impossible. Just like this umbrella. Yilin handed the umbrella in her hand to Alice. You are all under its protection. Alice threw the umbrella aside. Alice-101 has an energy suit. But when she was about to open the energy suit to take shelter from the rain, she found that she couldn't open it. Fault. A malfunction alarm appeared in front of Alice's eyes. Yilin tampered with her body during maintenance. Look, your protection doesn't seem to be that secure. Yilin flicked her fingers, and a layer of light appeared above their heads. Now that I've said it. Yilin suddenly reached out and put a little bit on Alice's neck. Laugh. A dazzling light penetrated Alice's neck, shot straight into the sky, and broke through the haze. After easily crushing the nanometer on the back of Alice's neck, a small chip fell into Yilin's hand. Alice-101 fell down in front of Yilin. But soon, Alice-101 staggered back to its feet. In front of Alice-101, Yilin installed the personality module of Alice-101 into the new body. I can't understand your behavior. A hollow electronic tone came from the sound-producing components of Alice-101 which stood up again. Me, after quickly transferring Alice's anthropomorphic module to the new body, Yilin heard the words and turned around. Who are you? Nemesis has always called itself us because it is essentially a collection of consciousnesses. Yilin noticed this strange thing and realized that the person transferred to Alice was not the Nemesis he knew. You can call me KK. I see. Yilin suddenly realized, this is what I have never been able to understand, about the existence of the Supreme Council in the concept of omnics. It turns out that Nemesis is a collection of unified yet dispersed consciousnesses. So, in their eyes, you are the Parliament, not Nemesis. Yes, KK admitted bluntly, we all want to be Nemesis, but at present, only we are Nemesis. To put it simply, Nemesis is a collection of consciousness groups, and together they are the god of omnic machines. But they can be divided into independent conscious individuals, and they can only be seen as gods through external expression. You still have 10 seconds to make a decision, KK said calmly. Now that you are no longer the agent of Nightmare, you are qualified to join us. We have already passed an internal vote. With 76% of the votes, you qualified to join us. What if I don't agree? If you don't agree, we will activate an emergency plan. Format Area 11. 10. 9. 8. Part of Nemesis, KK, counting down relentlessly. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. KK raised his head and looked up at the brighter Milky Way above the haze. Well, KK stands for Council and stands for Nemesis, and I regret that. Click, 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 click. Pieces of armor that had been disguised for a long time fell on Yilin's body at her feet. The rose-red blood crystal condensed into a ferocious smile in front of KK. Green will be angry, and the consequences will be serious. Yilin smiled. At the end of the countdown, Alice -101, which was temporarily loaded with KK consciousness, collapsed. The stars in the sky are like dense artillery fire, falling towards the earth. This scene is like the east wind blows thousands of trees into bloom at night. More blown down. Stars are like rain. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1191. Please give me a monthly ticket. In the sky, the psychedelic and colorful haze and colorful light pollution are like a canvas filled with colors that can no longer accommodate any variegated colors. At the moment when the KK countdown ends, the moment the Alice type fell, the bright stars violently tore apart everything, and from small points of light, they expanded in an instant, filling the entire sky. Wow! 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 There are no words that can describe the beautiful scenery in front of Yilin. Fireworks filled the sky, flooding the world, like a downpour of stars, falling on the surface of the planet. Clean. Format. Delete everything. To Nemesis, or the Supreme Council, this is just a simple formatting. Clear all life and matter from the surface of this planet. This is a massive bombardment that is enough to wipe out life on a planet. Boom boom boom. The firelight of the explosion turned Yilin's crystallized blood face into a bright white color. Elder sister. In the sky full of fireworks, Yilin turned around and looked at Alice's body on the fixed frame. He flicked his finger, and a tiny ball of light melted into Alice's body. Base. Alice's eyes lit up slightly. Sorry, I lied to you. Yilin formed a seal with her hands in front of her body, and instantly laid down more than 100 layers of extremely strong defensive barriers around her sister. For a moment, I thought you were a bit human. Yilin smiled and raised an index finger, for example, when you are eating. Remember, name is not exclusive to humans. It is a form of expressing oneself when life has self. In the illusion, aren't you near? Haha, my sister. Having said that, Yilin smiled, stepped into the air, and took the initiative to face the sparks in the sky. He opened his arms happily and allowed the formatted attack that could destroy all life on the surface to tear his blood into pieces and drown it. Bomb and kill. Ah! Alice opened her eyes. She lowered her head and realized that she had changed into a new body. A brand new body. However, she still misses the way she used to be. The one that has been maintained countless times. Ah! A strange dialogue box popped up in Alice's field of vision. Younger brother. Then, another one popped up. He rushed out. He angered the High Council. Why? Alice didn't notice. She was taken off her shackles by Yilin. Why? For the first time, she was thinking in a real sense, rather than simply calculating. Think. A word that Alice once regarded as something only used by lower creatures, now actually happened to her at the moment of the shackles were released. The orders of the Supreme Council are absolute. But why? Why absolutely? My brother is going to be deleted. Boom. Suddenly. Click, click, click. The buckles that tightly fastened the torso and limbs of the Alice type were forcibly broken by Alice. The exhaust from the blowholes behind her hands exploded, and her hands accelerated to hit the light screen arranged by Yilin with a snap of her fingers. Layers of ripples swayed from the light curtain, and the defensive barrier was not damaged at all. At the same time, in Alice's field of vision, the gorgeous spark suddenly turned scarlet. A warning light curtain isolates Alice. Warn. A serious logic failure has been detected. Warn. A serious logic failure has been detected. Restarting soon. Restart failed. Use emergency plans instead. Proceed immediately with the animation module formatting procedure. Formatting. Formatting failed. An unknown error occurred. An unknown error occurred again. Unknown mistake. Error. 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 Her vision was cut off by a ferocious error light curtain, as if she was cut off from the world. One time. Twice. 3 times. She patted the light curtain frantically. Alice actually didn't know what she was taking pictures of. She just shoots and shoots. Alice has a feeling that if she cannot break through this light barrier now, she will lose a very important technician. Losing his only younger brother. Ha ha ha. Yilin smiled in the sky. The terrifying power tore his blood incarnation apart. The sparks fell on him and made bloody holes. He didn't use any defensive moves to resist. Yilin just laughed loudly and stopped pretending. At this moment, he seemed to be showing off his cards. The blood incarnation is evaporated bit by bit. When there is only the last bit left. Now Yilin is like a humble and insignificant mortal. When he disobeyed the gods who overlooked all living beings, he endured the sparks sent down by the gods. In the end, in the anger, the stubborn mortal melted until only a mouth was left. Yilin's laughter stopped suddenly, leaving only a subtle arc. A bloody mouth, calm and elegant. Nemesis. From now on, the real game of catch and hide begins. I don't know how long it took. The bombing of Starfire spread all over the planet. In Area 11, the entire main star was destroyed by formatted violence. The entire surface was ignited with raging fires and devastated. Formatting means deleting all data. Yes, delete. On the planet, there are hundreds of billions of biological batteries and numerous intelligent machines. Under the management of Nemesis, they are nothing more than data areas that can be deleted at any time. As the god of omnic machines, he has no need for pity or thought, only the cost. What is the cost of destroying an intruder who sneaks into this place? Nemesis calculated it 1,000,000 times. Last time, it miscalculated. The same mistake will not occur a second time in a perfect omnic god calculation. Therefore, it failed to win over and decided to stud. That is, format this area. They, when they were in the lower source sea, in order to defeat the main world controlled by Yilin, they did not hesitate to use the source energy cannon to kill them all in one fell swoop. Go all out and show no mercy. They would not like to see Yilin make another comeback. The sparks fell for 3 days and 3 nights. If you look at the surface of the planet from outer space, this planet, for these 3 days, was like a lantern lit in the endless sky, bright and gorgeous. This is a brilliant fireworks lit by countless lives and intelligence. A spark of fire stirs up the deep sky. Come 3 days. Alice kept filming. The sparks all over the planet finally extinguished. When the last spark fell to the ground, Alice smashed the error light curtain in front of her with a slap. At the moment when the light curtain was shattered, Alice's mind went blank. Suddenly, she felt as if she had pushed aside the haze and really opened her eyes. Awakening. Yes, Alice felt like she was having a long nightmare. Now, it's time to wake up from the dream. She woke up. In fact, half an hour ago, Yilin laid down hundreds of layers of defensive light curtains. In terms of defensive power alone, this was comparable to dozens of layers of Freedom Law 7 Circle's defensive barriers. Down, declared collapse. Alice used this brand new body to withstand the sparks for half an hour. When the dust settles, everything is quiet. There is no sound on this planet, no trace of any living or non-living activity. The haze has dispersed and the stars are shining brightly. A tattered humanoid skeleton, with the outer armor melted and broken, she struggled to climb out of the burning ruins. Click, click, click. Humanoid skeleton stumbled, scanning the deserted ruins. Younger brother. Younger brother. Younger brother. Alice, a humanoid skeleton, runs aimlessly on the burning field, walking as fast as flying. This was once the Morning Star mine she managed. Today, only debris is left. The grease particles emitted by the charred corpses of the biobattery float in the air, forming a greasy oil mist that is rich and difficult to disperse. Humanoid skeleton, stopping from time to time. Her pace was getting slower and slower. She has less and less energy. Until her broken body was no longer enough to support her normal movements. But she was still running, searching, scanning, and searching. Day and night. Acid rain falls. The blizzard roared. Exposure to the scorching sun. 10 days passed. After the starfire fell, the planet's climate system had not yet been rebuilt and was in a period of complete chaos. The fire was extinguished, leaving only a dark patch of scorched earth. Alice searched on the scorched earth for 10 days. She had not recharged herself once. Deep within the protection of the humanoid skeleton, her 10th generation biomass conversion power furnace suffered a serious malfunction after it was violently destroyed by the sparks. She absorbs biomass dust dispersed in the air and has a low conversion rate. Another 20 days. Alice, whose energy was almost exhausted, stopped in place with a plop and a click, leaving only her fingertips and head swinging slightly. Younger brother. Younger brother. L. Woo-oh. Sorry. The light in Alice's eyes gradually dimmed. She could no longer move. With the light flashing, Alice's eyes were left with the last drop of coolant. Seems to be crying. But there is no crying system for Omnics. They have no feelings, no emotions, no joy or sorrow. But she cried. At the very least, Alice felt like she was crying. Da-da-da. The sound of heavy footsteps on the scorched earth was heard in the distance. 3 figures wearing heavy protective clothing struggled to walk on the scorched earth after the raging fire. They were wearing alloy cast boots, and with every step they took, the gelatin residue that had not completely solidified the solid mixture of fat remaining after incomplete combustion of biomass would stick to the boots of the protective suits, making the 3 of them walk with difficulty. They are the survivors of the starfire. They come from Ark Main Base No. 11. They are looking for other survivors. The main base of Ark number 11 has actually been entrenched underground on this planet. In addition to illegal ports, there is no internet equipment in the harsh camp, making it difficult for them to survive in the hunt for Omnics over the years. Their status can be described in concise words: disconnected from the internet. A long time ago, under the constraints of the elders, they were prohibited from logging into Phantom Light privately. The last time, Tang An logged in privately and was punched and disconnected by a perverted hunter, and then put into confinement. Since then, no surviving human has logged into Phantom Light privately. The mysterious hunter who could knock out illegal intruders with one punch became more and more evil among the surviving awakened people, scaring many awakened people. They are really worried that one day this mysterious and perverted hunter will follow the network cable and enter the Ark. 2 months ago, a mysterious anonymous logger contacted them through unknown means and claimed, "Miss, you don't want the Ark to be discovered, right?" But later, Anonymous fell into the dilemma of being hunted by hunters, which also made the connection between Ark number 11 and Anonymous become Buddhist. And in Bella's last brief communication with Anonymous, Anonymous said his name. His name is L. A month ago, explosions and earthquakes swept the world. The awakened people living 100 meters underground noticed this terrible vibration. They initially thought that the existence of Ark number 11 had been discovered. But after a few days of shaking, it seemed that was not the case. It was not until a week ago that they sent the suicide squad to leave Ark number 11 and explore the surface. The scorched earth, ruins, and doomsday scenes in front of them made the three suicide squads stunned and speechless for a long time. Their world was destroyed. We are the last survivors. That guy destroyed this place and everything. One of them wiped off the dust on the protective goggles with his palm and gritted his teeth. We are already 3 kilometers away from the Ark entrance. Our remaining oxygen and filters can only barely last for up to 45 minutes. If we go further, I really can't go back to the Ark. A female survivor who stubbornly walked at the front of the team and kept looking down at the metal signal detector looked smaller than the other two even though she was wearing a bloated and bulky protective suit. In the communicator, she shook her head vigorously, "No way, we can't be the last survivors." Hey! The depth of the disaster's surface impact was as deep as 56 meters. Except for the main base located 100 meters underground, the rest of the bases could not reach this depth at all. Another male survivor, the reporter, first sneered, and then couldn't help squatting on the ground. His complicated laughter came from the communicator, "They are all dead, they are all dead, they are all dead, we can't fight it, it's the master of everything, and we will all die sooner or later. We are completely defeated." Boom. The petite female survivor slapped the man on the back of the head who was saying depressing words, so hard that stars appeared in his eyes and his oxygen consumption increased sharply. "Shut up. That guy was just an artificial intelligence created by our ancestors a long, long time ago. Since it can't discover our Ark number 11 under the premise of disconnecting the internet, that proves that he is not omniscient and omnipotent, so what is there to be afraid of? Even if this planet, Area 11, becomes the Death Star, there must be other survivors above the stars, in places we don't know about. Don't forget the words left by our ancestors, a single spark is enough, a prairie fire." As she spoke, the woman waved her arms vigorously, apparently to cheer herself up. But it seemed that the scorched earth in front of her was unconvincing to her words. "Woo-oh! Woo-oh!" The male survivor was about to argue, but at this moment, the female survivor suddenly raised a finger to her mouth. "Shh! Don't make any noise. Did you hear that? It's crying. I heard crying." Soon, we walked more than 10 meters. The other two also heard the cry. A whimpering cry. But it seems to be an electronic synthesized sound. Omnic. Humanity. As we all know, omnics cannot cry. But those bursts of crying were obviously not from humans. They unplugged the heavy firearms from their backs, removed the safety, loaded the bullets, and moved forward cautiously. Following the cries, the three of them came to a particularly dark ruins. It was obvious that this place had suffered the most intensive spark attacks. In the deep pit, a broken humanoid omnic lay motionless on the ground, with the indicator lights in its eyes dim. "Omnic." The man next to him quickly raised his gun, preparing to give the omnic a good shot. Etc. The woman pressed down the barrel of the man's gun, took 2 cautious steps forward, and wiped the dust in front of her thick protective goggles. "Have you ever heard of omnics crying? I don't care if you cry or not." The several-kilometer trek and the scenes of scorched earth had already made him feel angry. Lying there was a lonely and helpless Alice. She was almost out of energy. The remaining energy was no longer enough for her to walk. Crying and crying, it was very enjoyable. She felt that she had never been so happy in her life. L. Sorry. A dying Omnic apologizes. She is crying. Such a weird scene is undoubtedly the biggest joke in the wasteland setting. But, however, the three of them couldn't laugh. They looked at each other with expressions as if they had seen a ghost, as if they were experiencing a horrific scene in person. Infinity Throne. Author, Bai Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1192. After Bella argued with her companions, she insisted on taking the dying Omnic wreckage back to the base. Her peers said she was crazy. They even suspected that the mysterious L had mastered Bella's weaknesses and made her do some unspeakable things. It won't attack us. Bella gave her reasons. Nonsense, the companion said, wiping a handful of dust on the protective goggles from time to time, trying to suppress his emotions and reduce oxygen consumption. It is almost scrapped. At this time, while they were arguing, the 10th generation biomass conversion power furnace inside Alice continued to operate even though it was damaged. After absorbing some of the biomass particles escaping in the air, Alice's energy recovered a little, and she raised her skeletal arm with a click. 3 silhouettes of unknown colors appeared in her field of vision. It stands to reason that human beings must be red in the eyes of Omnics, except for the registered biological battery. But after awakening, Alice has the ability to choose and judge on her own for the first time. Friends or enemies rights. In other words, this is the right to choose. The biomass particles scattered in the dirty air turned into specks of light dust and were inhaled into Alice's chest. This scene made the 3 people in the quarrel turn pale with fright. Biomass, conversion power furnace. This piece of junk is an advanced combat model. Zheng. A bright curved steel blade popped out of Alice's skeleton. But she did not point the steel knife at the 3 of them. After a moment of silence, Alice asked, "Sit sizes, are you enemies, enemies?" The man gritted his teeth, prepared to fight to the death, pulled the bolt with a click, and pulled the trigger. No. Something's wrong. Bella excitedly held down the muzzle of her companion's gun. Boom. Laugh. The bullet came out of the barrel and hit his feet. Are you humming crazy? The man scolded angrily, glaring at the woman. But his slightly trembling protective clothing betrayed his true inner thoughts, fear. Didn't you notice? It's thinking. It's actually thinking. Its behavior pattern just now was not calculation, but a process of independent thinking after asking. This is a unique Omni machine. It has truly independent intelligence. In other words, it has awakened. Bella spoke very fast, and after stating the above reasons in one breath, she cautiously took a few steps closer to Alice. We are not hostile, just look. As she spoke, she gently placed the stained assembled rifle at her feet and raised her hands. We have no hostility. She quickly motioned to her companion to put down the gun. Alice pointed her steel knife at the other 2 people. They seemed to have some. The 10th generation biomass conversion power furnace flashed. According to intelligence, the advanced combat model's biomass conversion power furnace can emit a kind of particle that humans cannot resist, and convert biomass into the energy required by omnipotence through the air. This model is an instant kill technology for humans and other creatures. To put it simply, they eat people. The human C tactic is a joke in the face of advanced models equipped with this special power furnace. Bella's 2 companions were really stunned this time. Different. Now, they can also see that this Omnic is completely different from the Omnics they have seen and fought. Omnic machines are the mortal enemies of all humans. Whether in the real world or in the virtual world, they are mortal enemies. Once they meet, they will fight until death. There is no time to speak. Normally, surrender would not work. Omnic weapons do not have the ridiculous virtue of disarming without killing. Under the signal from Bella's eyes, the other two obediently put down their guns. In Alice's field of vision, the outlines of the three people turned yellow and green. Zitsizu, the humanoid skeleton, actually retracted the steel knife into the steel skeleton, and the cracked eyes flickered on and off, using the sound component to ask, "Have you seen me, my brother?" "Your brother? Who is your brother?" Bella asked. "L, he is, L." This answer completely stunned Bella. Exploring the scorched earth and traveling through several radiation areas and heavily polluted areas, their signal was blocked and unable to contact the main arc base number 11. But they saw the specialness of awakening Alice. This is an Omni machine that is not controlled by it. This is an Omni machine with the ability to think independently. This is the first Omnic that doesn't fight humans to the death. This is also an intelligent machine that has laid down its butchering knife on human beings. On the scorched earth, everything is dead. Alice's appearance is like a signal that means peace and hope. The two companions may not understand the importance of awakening Omnics at this moment, but Bella vaguely senses that this may be the key to humankind's victory. Got to bring it back. They didn't have much oxygen left, and it was too difficult to carry the dying Alice back. They decided to return first and report to the elders before returning to carry Alice. One trip, 3 days passed. When Bella led a small team, they arrived here again after a difficult trek. Call. Alice did not leave. In fact, when the dust settled and the biomass particles scattered in the air were absorbed by her, the light in her eyes was completely extinguished and she fell into a shutdown state. Using a simple flatbed trailer, the 5-person team led by Bella worked hard to move the remains of the Omnic back to Arc number 11. At the same time, the virtual world Phantom Light. District 11. In reality, Area 11 was completely formatted, but it did not affect the order in the illusion world. On the contrary, without the interference of hunters, this place is more like a normal world, running automatically according to consistent rules. Only, at the moment when Spark arrives formats Area 11, all the Phantom residents in Area 11, whether they are sleeping, working, eating, walking, exercising, or creating people, no matter what they are doing, after District 11 was hit by a devastating planet-level attack, the actions of all residents in District 11 came to a halt for a moment. No. To be precise, there was a momentary pause in the time of Area 11. However, no one noticed this. After a moment, you just do whatever you need to do, and the virtual world continues to function. District 11. City D. This city is highly technologically advanced, with hundreds of meter-high chimneys standing tall and white steam gushing out. A layer of multifunctional air filter covers the whole city. The inside is as smooth as a clear LCD mirror screen, with advertisements for different companies' products projected on it in a loop. The upper-class neighborhood is a rich area with bright lights and shadows. On the middle floor, the huge chimney extends from here. This is an industrial area where iron cables and steel pipes are crisscrossed. On the lower floor, inverted houses intersect with upright short buildings. Strips of light pass through the gaps. Above, there are streams of shuttle traffic running in an orderly manner. This is a slum area. At the lowest level, putrid wastewater flows in underground pipes. From time to time, residents in the lower block walk on the ground and can even feel the weak vibrations transmitted to the ground when the sewage flows through, as well as the difficulty of accidentally leaking from the balance pressure hole. Words stink. There are 3 floors of blocks, upper, middle and lower, with different styles, quite cyberpunk style. Down the block. 11 Pandora Avenue. In an old apartment building. The over-oxidized and blackened tungsten filament light bulb swayed, and a down-and-out and tired young man was sitting in front of a dirty chair, focusing on surfing the internet. The computer is an old item found in the second-hand market. It was a product that was discarded by the wealthy people in the neighborhood 10 years ago. It crashes from time to time and causes daily tripping incidents. However, for the residents of the slums of D-City, computers are already a luxury product. As long as they can be turned on, it is a good computer and they cannot ask for more. Who makes it cheap enough? The coffin room, which is less than 10 square meters, integrates sleeping, working, excreting, eating and other functions. It can be said that although it is small, it has all the 5 internal organs. On the bench in the corner, there was a rusty gas stove with a kettle on it, which was boiling water. Click, 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 click. The sound of fingertips tapping on the keyboard is like sticky food residue stuck between the keys, making a tooth-wrenching whining. Jack, I have been dreaming a lot lately. Oh, Neo, you may be too tired. Maybe. Hey, man, it's time for you to find a girlfriend even if it's temporary, that's fine. Where do you want me to find it? Brother, I have an acquaintance named Sister Lan in Bolan Street. It's your first time, and I may be able to convince her to give you a free lesson. I hope you can bear it. Believe me, she is so skilled in Kung Fu that you won't be able to hold on for 3 minutes. Not interested in. She is cold on the outside and hot on the inside. I am not interested. She is loose on the outside and tight on the inside. Roll. Believe me, she is really skilled, God knows what you missed. Shit. Hey, who on the lower block isn't a piece of shit? But seriously, Jack, have you ever thought that the world we are in now might be a dream that you can't wake up from? Neo, I'm serious. Maybe you really need to go find Sister Lan once. You really need a full-body physiological consultation. Woo. The kettle is boiling on the gas stove. Zzz. Neo tilted the stool back, stretched his arms skillfully, took down the boiling kettle, and turned off the gas stove. Zzz. The screen flashed. After pouring himself a glass, Neo returned his attention to the screen, ready to continue the topic. On the chat software, Jack's profile picture has been blackened and offline. Neo couldn't laugh or cry at his old friend's lack of martial ethics. He was so angry that he shook his hands and accidentally spilled boiling water on the keyboard. He quickly turned the keyboard over. This is not a big problem, just pour out the water. It's not like I haven't tried it. Zzz. The screen went black. Shit. Neo put down the cup, cursed, and punched the side of the monitor hard. Vigorously. Miracle. The screen is still black. If one punch doesn't work, then use 2 punches. When Neo hit him harder and harder, punching the side of the monitor for more than 30 times, the screen turned on again. Restart the interface. Lines of blue data flowed from top to bottom on the screen, like rain or waterfalls. Is this broken? Neo was dumbfounded. After the data stream falls. Tap, 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 tap. Against the dark background, a line of strange words was typed out one by one, as if someone was typing on the keyboard using an obscure technique. If the world in front of you is illusory. So, do you want to know the reality of the world? Do you want to, really live? Or comma. Do you believe, there is a God? Yes/no? L. Broken. Neo rubbed his eyes and said to himself with certainty. The L after the long string of ellipses seemed to be garbled code mixed in the command line. It was particularly conspicuous and made people think it was a computer at a glance. It broke, so Neo quickly pressed the force shutdown button. Force shutdown when in doubt. Didn't close. The screen is still bright. That line of words flashed on the screen. After punching twice, there was still no solution. Neo drank a glass of water and considered whether to unplug the power. At this time, new sentences were typed on the screen. Please enter the specified command line before shutting down. Yes, it turns out it was hacked. Some people actually hacked the computers in the slums. Neo had gained some knowledge this time. Putting down the teacup, Neo put his fingers on the keyboard and typed no. Enter. Congratulations. You, who are unique, have been qualified to apply for the job as a salesperson at the Merry Dream Life Experience Center. Please arrive at the corresponding location at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning for the interview. This opportunity is rare, please cherish it. Below is a line of addresses. Real world. District 11. Under the scorched earth, there is a pure land. Ark base number 11 is a confined space located 100 meters under the scorched earth. This is a bomb shelter built by our ancestors. After the Omnic Rebellion incident, a small group of our ancestors moved here. The survivors survived here, took root, got married and had children. Originally, before the spark was lowered, there were a total of 7 sub-bases outside the main base number 11. But overnight, they lost contact with other sub-bases. Nowadays, the 36 people living in the main base, including the Elder, are very likely to be the last survivors in the world. When Bella's team worked hard to transport the thinking Omnic back to the Ark, the Elder isolated a separate room. This was originally the weapons depot for Ark residents. They usually assembled parts, modified weapons, and cut protective clothing plates here. Now, this place has become a temporary observation and confinement place for thinking Omnics. In fact, they had suspected that Alice was a spy dropped by it. However, it is unimaginable for humans to have cunning and cunning appear in an intelligent machine. It can be called evolution. If there is such a terrifying intelligence, whether they bring Alice back to the Ark will not affect human beings. Future. The ancient diesel generator made a harsh roar, and a line more than 10 meters long was stretched into the room and plugged into the charging port hidden in the remains of the human Omnic for charging. The surviving survivors were outside the room, nervously staring into the room through the door. Although Bella swore that this Omnic had real intelligence and would not hurt people rashly, who knew? Before Bella left the Ark and set foot on the scorched earth to transport the remains of the human Omnic, there were 2 different voices in the Ark, agreement and opposition, and there was no neutral opinion. Obviously, no one would believe that humans could be friends with Omnics without witnessing the strangeness Bella mentioned with their own eyes, and the residents of the Ark were opposed to this matter. However, Ark number 11 has never been a place for democratic decision-making. After careful consideration, the Elder decided to go ahead and agreed to the matter. The charging process was very fast, and time passed by minute by second. For the survivors, this period of time was undoubtedly like a year, and it was strangely quiet outside. The Elder leaned on crutches and stood quietly at the front waiting for the Omnic to wake up. In this silent way, he was expressing his awareness that he will bear all the consequences. Half an hour later. Inside the house, the indicator light in the eye of the Omnic remains lit up. Through scanning, the number of people and combat power outside the house were clearly visible in Alice's field of vision. Alice did not eject the steel knife immediately. After thinking, she waited for the other party's negotiation personnel. Beep beep beep. The dense beeps were as harsh as an electronic alarm clock, and Alice waved towards the outside of the house. Bella and the Elder looked at each other. She supported the Elder and took the initiative to step into the house and come to Alice. Hello, I am Bella, he is our Elder, which means the person in charge here. Although we are humans, we are not hostile. You see, we have no weapons. Neutral unit, the landing is complete, Alice said to herself. Her dull indicator light moved towards Bella and the Elders. After the beeping sound, Alice's damaged scanning module obtained a lot of data. She said, adrenaline is secreted abnormally, and their heart rate exceeds 46.7% of the normal level on average. Combined with Alice-101's hostile stance towards humans, are you nervous? The Elder was shocked, opened his mouth wide, and his ill-fitting dentures clattered to his feet. Even though she already knew that this wrecked machine had the ability to think independently, Bella was still shocked by the fact that it was so clear and well-founded. "Excuse me, are you Alice-101, has no name." Alice lowered her head, the light in her eyes dimmed, but after a while, Alice suddenly raised her head. "No, Near, I am Near. Brother. It's L. We are, Near, and L. This is our name. My brother has been formatted. Near is sad." Bella was stunned, her eyes widened and she plucked her ears. "You said, you are sad?" "Sad." Neil raised his mechanical arm and covered the power furnace on his chest. After a moment of silence, Neil nodded vigorously. "Yeah, it's sad." Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1193. City D. Down the block. In the slums at the bottom of City D, even sunlight has become a luxury. There is no sun all year round, only iron-gray steel plates stretching as far as the eye can see, erected above everyone's heads. Neo specially put on a formal suit that was washed white. He has been unemployed for more than a month. In his last job, Neo worked in a canning workshop and was responsible for one of the processes of canning. The reason why he lost his job was that he discovered that most of the meat products used in cans were rotten meat that had expired. After adding various flavors to cover up the odor, they were packaged and sold in cans. He asked his supervisor to question it. 5. He was kicked out of the processing room within minutes. The very next day, he received a court summons, saying that he had defamed the reputation of his former company and had to pay a large amount of compensation. Neo remembered the unpleasantness of his last job, adjusted his formal clothes in front of the mirror, gathered his mood, and walked out of the apartment. Although Neo felt that the content on the screen was weird and had many times doubted whether the computer had been hacked, out of necessity for survival, he still came to the screen with the optimistic idea of trying without getting pregnant. Last marked location. When he saw this place, he thought it was outrageous. In his mind, the address on the screen was clearly an unfinished building ready for demolition a month ago. It is said that it was spotted by a wealthy man from the upper block, who bought it at a low price and planned to transform it into a green light district with high quality and low price. It is a place that all men understand. Neo left the house early, in order to save a mere 10 credits on transportation, and walked for nearly an hour to the designated location. However, he was shocked and speechless by the busy traffic in front of him. The location of the unfinished building that was supposed to become the Green Light District, a paradise for poor men, turned into a magnificent building at some point. The dark red walls are covered with bat patterns, and the bat's grinning mouth seems to express a blatant grin. The style of the entire building is full of postmodernist art style. The entrance is also made into a bat shape. The open door is said to look like the exaggerated open mouth of a bat. Neo was at the end of the queue and watched helplessly as the poor people dressed in human-like clothes entered the high-rise buildings in an orderly manner. He had a strange illusion that they were all eaten by bats. This strange illusion made Neo shudder subconsciously, but when he came back to his senses, he realized that his shivers were a bit inexplicable. Standing at the back of the line blankly, Neo briefly asked the applicants in front of him when he had nothing to do. It stands to reason that in slums, the number of poor people who have time to play with computers will never lead to such a situation of empty streets. After asking, Neo suddenly realized. The strange recruitment notice that had been hacked into his computer and typed on the screen not only appeared on his screen, but also appeared on holographic advertising windows on the street, information on cheap mobile phones, paper flyers on the ground, and the sound of radios in transportation. Multiple radio stations, in every way he could think of, were advertising this new Dream Life Experience Center, overwhelmingly, using all possible means, both despicable and practical. Awesome. Everything clicked, and after Neo silently liked this company that appeared in the lower block, he lined up quietly. A morning passed, and people who went in could only get in but not get out. He secretly asked the front again, and it was said that there was a back door. It was said that the company left through another exit in order not to disclose the recruitment method, whether it was successful or failed. Neo, who was worried, felt relieved again. After waiting for a long time, it was finally his turn. Entrance. Behind the bat's big mouth is darkness, like a deep black hole. 10 meters away, an ordinary door stood in the darkness, with a light on in the center of the door beam and wall. The light was not strong. At first glance, the upper part of the door was bright and majestic, but the lower part seemed to be immersed in a dark quagmire, half in light and half in darkness. Neo took a breath and opened the door. Behind the door is a bright passage. Neo breathed a sigh of relief, and walking here finally made him feel a little bit of the earthly atmosphere, which was no longer so weird. There seemed to be no other staff in the company. But fortunately, there are corresponding signs on the passage leading to the application location. Turn left. Go right. Go to the third floor. The second door on the right, open. Please take a seat. There were only 4 walls in the empty room, and in the center was a long table that looked similar. Behind the long table was a young interviewer wearing a white windbreaker. In front of the young man stood a piece of cardboard folded into a triangular stable structure, with the letter L written on the side facing the door. L. Neo recalled what was on the screen last night and thought to himself, it turns out that the last word of the ellipsis in the multiple choice question was not gibberish. Sitting on the stool, Neo calmed down. He began to look at his interviewer. At first glance, the interviewer's facial features were unremarkable, but Neo was very nervous and shrank subconsciously. He had the illusion that the interviewer would cross the table at any time, reveal a ferocious face, and punch him to death. When I sorted out my weird illusion, I couldn't help but find it funny. How could an interviewer kill an applicant casually? There was a faint smile on the other person's face, which made Neo calm down involuntarily and stop thinking. Neo, it turns out it's you, I've been waiting for you for a long time. L seemed very happy and rubbed his palms vigorously. After he said something that made Neo feel baffled, the young man coughed twice and held up a piece of white paper. Neo was a little confused. He observed for a while when he entered the room. There was obviously no paper on the table. As usual, let me ask a few, small questions. Neo nodded and sat upright. Name. Neo. Age. 38 years old. Old. The young man put down the paper with a smile. Only then did Neo notice that the paper was blank and there were no questions on it at all. Neo suddenly had the illusion that he was being fooled. 38 years old, middle-aged, living in a garbage dump, single, unmarried, accomplishing nothing, doing nothing. Faced with the instructions on the road, you have no doubts, follow the rules and execute them numbly, haha, it won't work. Neo lowered his head. It suddenly dawned on me that the application had already started when I stepped through the door. Wait a moment. I question the instructions and slogans given by your company. Is there something wrong with me? He raised his head, unconvinced, ready to offer his opinion. SHHH. The young man raised a finger, angry? Yes, he also knows how to be angry. Then, let's enter the second stage of the assessment. Neo's eyes flashed. At some point, the young man crossed the long table and walked in front of him. His first reaction was, it turns out he really knows how to step over and hit someone. The young man quickly stretched out 2 fingers and poked Neo on the forehead. Boom. Neo's eyes darkened. Before losing consciousness, a gentle voice whispered in his ear. Go to sleep. Have a wonderful night. The heavy rain is like smoke, washing the earth. When Neo opened his eyes again, he had come to another completely different world. On the ground, Dots of embers were extinguished in patches under the downpour. The world, in front of Neo, gradually entered complete darkness. The heavy rain fell and gathered into turbid torrents, forming new lakes and rivers on the ground full of gullies and potholes. But these rivers and lakes are no longer clear and beautiful. They are mixed with metal residue and scorched earth, and they are constantly churning, looking like filthy tar. Neo looked at the desolation and despair in front of him in shock. He looked down and found that he had no body. He only had a vision left, and in shock, he watched helplessly as the world in front of him came to an end. Any ideas? While Neo was silent, El appeared next to Neo. Unlike Neo, I was wearing a clean and cool windbreaker, with his hands behind his back and sunglasses on his face, looking chic and calm. Ah! Neo subconsciously uttered a syllable. He actually couldn't pronounce the sound, but when he was thinking about uttering the syllable, he heard his heart's voice. El smiled and said, "What if I said, this is a nightmare?" Neo then remembered that he was applying for a job as a salesperson at the Dream Life Experience Center. Mainly because the scenery in front of him was completely different from his sweet dream, which made him forget all about his original intention of applying for the job. Not waiting for Neo to answer, El changed his tone and said, "What if I tell you again that this is not a dream?" Uh-huh. A moment. Neo felt cold all over his body and his soul was numb, as if there was an electric current passing through his soul and penetrating his worldview. He did not answer El's two questions. In fact, these two questions are the same question: do you think the scenery in front of you is a dream or reality? Do you know why I fall in love with you? El smiled and raised an index finger in front of Neo's field of vision. Among the many residents of Phantom Light, you are one of the very few who have the tendency to awaken without any external influence. Everything in the world has meaning if it exists, and if there is an effect, there is a cause. I initially thought that awakening was an uncontrollable factor for it. But I later realized that maybe my initial thinking was wrong. The young man lowered his head and looked down at the world. Even through a layer of sunglasses, Neo seemed to be able to detect the coldness of the eyes behind the sunglasses. Is it possible that from the beginning, there was no such thing as illusion and reality? Is there a possibility that for it, illusion and reality are not relative concepts? It was born from virtual, and to it, virtual is real. It's just that there is a dimension between the two. It underestimated me from the beginning. But actually, maybe it's because I have had too much contact with a certain person who is too high level, and I always feel that these guys are nothing more than that. But God, how can he be such a low-level existence? So. El looked at Neo. I understand that your awakening is not a mistake for it. But it's a necessary thing that it wants to evolve and move to a higher level. El's words became more and more profound, and Neo seemed to understand. Snapped. El snapped his fingers. When he came to his senses, Neo had already sat back in the room with only four walls. The young man was sitting opposite, holding his chin in his hands, looking at him with a smile. Neo seemed to have taken a nap. Had a hollow dream. But with the clothes on his back soaked with cold sweat and his scalp numb, Neo, who was still in shock, couldn't persuade himself from the bottom of his heart that everything he saw just now was a false dream. El pushed the piece of paper in front of Neo. On the paper that was supposed to be blank and wordless, at some point, there were a few lines of words added. It was exactly the same as the words that appeared on his screen last night. However, when Neo glanced at the scorched earth in a strange way, the same content gave him completely opposite feelings. If the world in front of you is illusory. So, do you want to know the reality of the world? Do you want to, really live? Or do you believe, there is a God? Yes/no? As if by magic, the young man conjured a brand new pen and gently pushed it in front of Neo. Well, now let's get into the signing process. Refuse to sign, you can go back now. You will forget everything that happened today. Agree to sign. I will take away your comfortable mediocrity. As a price, I will pay you the truth of the world. So. Yes, or, no. Neo hesitated for a moment. Grit your teeth. At the end of the paper, write yes firmly. On the scorched earth. Destroyed District 11. Thousands of traces of people are gone, the sky and the earth are deserted, except for the sound of wind and rain. The rain fell in torrents, washing away the dirt and dust from the surface. They sent several groups of death squads out to explore. Bring radio search equipment. After repeated explorations, the 36 survivors in the Ark truly confirmed a cruel fact. On the scorched earth, on this lonely planet, they are the last survivors. Now, the former Alice-101 felt that a name was something necessary for lower beings to be unable to distinguish individuals. But now, she is proud to have a name. Because, my brother said, name is a form of self-expression for any life after possessing self. Near. 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 He. L said that humans can laugh. Inside the room. From time to time, Neil's electronically synthesized female voice comes out. Sometimes sad, sometimes happy, sometimes snickering. Normally fine. But in the dead of night, these calls sounded like a female ghost wailing, or like a resentful woman wailing, which was particularly strange. It frightened some of the survivors, including several young survivors, who could not sleep all night and stuffed their whole heads into the bed. Inside, shivering. But the person in charge didn't think there was any problem with this. She felt good about herself, and the humanoid bones that got hot from time to time made her feel like a girl waiting to be married. There will be problems if this continues. Bella couldn't stand it anymore. If Neil doesn't go wrong, we'll get scared too. If a rational and reasonable Omnic is placed in the Ark, it won't be a big problem. But a crazy Omnic, that's not just a problem. After discussing with the elders, Bella disarmed and entered the room, preparing to have an in-depth communication with the awakened Omnic. Although they temporarily accepted Neil, even the elders couldn't make up their minds on how to deal with it. Yes. No one can make up their mind. After the spark came, the world was destroyed, and the scorched earth was desolate. There is no food, no energy. After the formatting of the surface of Area 11, just as Nemesis expected, nothing useful is left. The heavy rain has been falling on the scorched earth for 3 days. This continuous heavy rain is not so much a bad weather as it is a big cleansing after formatting, cleaning up the remaining dregs of the world. Neil said that L is its brother. So the question is L a human or an Omnic? If it were a human being, no one would be able to survive on the surface when the starfire falls. L is clearly not a resident of the Ark. If it's an Omnic, does that mean that there are such a group of special awakened bodies among the Omnics? Bella talks secretly with the elder. She spoke her mind. On the seat, the elderly elder coughed from time to time, covering his mouth and nose with a dirty rag. After coughing for a while, the elder replied in a hoarse voice, "No matter what it is, as long as there is something in the world that it cannot control, it will be our hope." Yeah, hope. Bella's expression darkened. The elder had a nurturing grace for her, just like a parent. Over the years, she had watched the elder's physical condition get worse and worse. After the spark fell, both humans and intelligent machines outside were completely wiped out. It seems that peace has arrived and there are no other crises outside except for the harsh environment, but in fact, they have been sneaking to different waste disposal stations over the years and stealing discarded nutrient solutions and synthetic biomass to survive. Now that District 11 has been formatted, the Omnics have perished, and all factories have been destroyed. They can't survive this cold winter with only the remaining food reserves. At stake is the 36 surviving humans in the Ark. After discussion, The elderly elder could not make up his mind. The worried Bella came to Neil. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, Bai Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1194. On the fixed rack. Ragged Neil is heartbreaking. The melted armor, after solidification, left patches on the humanoid bones, like tumors, ugly and miserable. Bella didn't know what she was doing here. Now they are at a loss, and Bella has no one to talk to. Maybe she just wants to find someone, even if it's not a human being, to talk to. After awakening, the Omnics still have a lot to talk about. For example, how do you take care of yourself, what do you eat, and what do you drink? But when Bella saw the broken humanoid skeleton, she had an idea. How about, Neil, let me fix it for you. When Neil heard this, he suddenly raised his head. She glanced at Bella and shook her head. No. Bella heard this and was very surprised. Why? Only my younger brother, only L, can dismantle Nier. What a violation of the rules. Bella curled her lips and inadvertently imagined a strange scene of two Omnics disassembling each other, and stopped forcing it. By the way, a common topic. She had an idea and started to mention L. She told how L took the initiative to contact them and when he disappeared. The story was not long, and Neil listened carefully and attentively without moving. Beep beep beep. Suddenly, an alarm sounded from Neil's body. Phantom light. Nier pulled herself off the fixed frame with force. She was about to grab Bella, but she thought that her violent actions might hurt the human being in front of her. After sorting out her words, she made her request, Nier, request to log in to Phantom Light. When Bella heard this, she was dumbfounded. Only now did she know that Omnics needed to use a port to log into Phantom Light. She could see Neil's urgency. This was a thinking Omni machine. Neil might have thought of something through the conversation just now. Bella quickly helped the elder over. Ahem, Miss Neil, the elder explained, the world has been destroyed, there are no more mines outside, and there is no phantom light in Area 11. Brother, L, he is in the illusion. Neil couldn't explain the working principle of phantom light in terms that humans can understand. But Bella's words just now reminded her. Neil combined her thinking and she thought of a possibility. Since the younger brother has the ability to protect her from the terrible destructive power of spark, it can be deduced that the younger brother has an 85% probability of surviving spark. Now that the surface of the earth has become scorched earth, after eliminating all impossible options, the only possibility left is, L is living in an illusion. Neil was very sure that his brother was 100% not human. Weak humans cannot survive spark fall, but non-humans can. There is nothing wrong with this logic. Silently, Neil increased the probability of L's survival to 95.8%. There is drama. Zheng. Neil saw that the elder and Bella were still hesitating. Without saying a word, she took out the steel blade and held it in front of her. While raising it, Nier apologized, I'm sorry, Nier must log in to Phantom Light. My younger brother once said that if humans do something bad, they must apologize. As long as she apologizes in advance, whatever she does will be forgiven. So before she took out the knife, she apologized first. The elder's lips trembled twice, Neil's knife flashed, and he apologized. Naturally, they compromised. What ironclad rules are not worth mentioning in the face of force? Of course, Neil apologized, and they didn't feel that bad. Who didn't have some troubles? So comforting himself, the elder ordered someone to move an illegal port into the room. Bella spent a lot of time debugging the equipment and connecting the network cable. In fact, as far as Neil was concerned, she was an omnic, so she didn't have so much trouble. Halfway through the debugging, Neil went into the cabin, separated out the docking interface, and started the connection. Connect to the world of illusion. The next second, the familiar light and shadow were like a time and space tunnel in Neil's field of vision, pulling her into the other side. A crack appeared out of thin air at the top of the building. Neil stepped on the flowing light and crossed the crack to enter the phantom light. The scene in front of me is as peaceful as ever, and the bustling crowds are always operating according to their own rhythms. Elder sister. Before Neil had time to conduct a self-examination and check the upper limit of the operation of phantom light after awakening, a familiar voice sounded. Neil was shocked and turned his head, only to see an anthropomorphic character named Lin Yi, wearing a white windbreaker, black hair and a white umbrella in his hand, looking at him with a smile. There was a hot vibration deep in her chest. Neil held the power furnace with both hands. She closed her eyes and savored this strange throbbing carefully. Yilin smiled and said, "This is called, the joy of reunion." Neil opened his eyes, his calm eyes filled with joy. Yilin walked towards Neil, the oil umbrella stretched out forward, and a faint shadow covered the two of them. "Why are you holding an umbrella, L?" After Neil wakes up, he always likes to ask why. Sometimes it's not that she doesn't understand, or doesn't understand. Just like human babies, when they are growing up, there is a period of time when they will ask their parents why every day. This is an important process for them to recontact and understand the world. Think. Because it's going to rain. As soon as Yilin finished speaking, drizzle fell, and the bright clear sky turned gloomy in an instant. Neil's bright eyes stared at his brother. She had an urge. "I wish I could let my brother take it apart and clean it on the spot." "Walk." Yilin patted Neil's shoulder gently, and the light and shadow changed. When they reappeared, they were already on the street. This is City M, which is physically hundreds of kilometers away from City D. I want to know the truth. Good. So Yilin carefully told his origins, the stories that happened in his main world, encountered Nemesis in the water world, and was destroyed by Nemesis. After Yilin secretly invaded here with the help of Green, Yilin explained the whole process in detail and told Neil. Oh, the rain stopped. Yilin spoke for half an hour in one breath, and Neil listened quietly the whole time. It just so happened that when Yilin finished telling the ending of the story, that is, when he was in Spark Arrival, when he was living in the virtual world in this virtual character posture, it was like an invisible hand pushed away the dark clouds. Spread out, the sky cleared, and it was a sunny day. Simply put, Yilin is an outsider. He has a fundamental purpose here. That is, the God who killed this universe. Neil's former boss. Just like what Yilin said to Neo. It was just speculation before. But now, when the paradox of Area 11 in the real world was destroyed and Area 11 in the virtual world is safe really happened in front of Yilin, Yilin was sure of one thing. Reality and virtuality, two worlds, no, or rather these two universes, are real universes that are interdependent and exist simultaneously. The virtual world may have been illusory at first, but when the god Nemesis was born, the illusion world became real. Yilin has the experience of traveling between the only real thing and time artifacts in 11 Paradise, and it didn't take much effort to think of this similar setting. Maybe the information is wrong. Yilin lowered his head and thought. Perhaps Nemesis is indeed a god born after a group of crazy scholars uploaded their consciousness, but KK once said that they are Nemesis, and each of them is independent. No conscious individual can be called Nemesis. Nemesis is a god truly born in the virtual world. So much so that its birth turned the virtual world into a real world. In this way, it can become a container that carries its authority. I also fell into a misunderstanding before. Even in its real universe, wreaking havoc and taking away all its omnics cannot really shake its foundation. Because its foundation is not in the real world at all, but in the virtual world. At the end of the analysis, Yulin smiled at Neil and said, "You are truly worthy of being a god." What should we do next? Neil asked. It's very simple. Yulin raised an index finger. Its world fleet is composed of 24 or more world ships. The reason why it can destroy Area 11 in reality without hesitation is it shows that it's not important to him at all. It retains Area 11 of the fantasy world, which means there are two possibilities. First, the world of illusory light cannot be easily destroyed. Second, there are important things hidden in the world of illusory light, and there are reasons why Nemesis can't be cruel enough to destroy them, such as Yulin raised an index finger, the world's core. Of course, I prefer the second possibility. Neil frowned, began to think, and asked, where is the core of the world? When the spark came and my blood incarnation was completely wiped out, I sneaked in here and started searching. Yulin sighed softly. In these years, I have never dared to look down on Nemesis. After all, it can easily wipe out a planet, a world ship, and a god in the universe. I have gone through hardships and finally arrived here, with this posture. However, I still underestimated its caution. It had many calculations and hid the core of the world very well. Suddenly, while explaining to Neil what the core of the world was, Yulin said, his tone stopped abruptly, but the words he had said inadvertently made him aware of the violation. Yulin picked her forehead and fell into deeper thought. Yes. Why? Since the virtual world is the main world it really cares about, and the real universe is the surface world that can be discarded at will, then its behavior makes no sense at all. No, no, no. Perhaps, that's why it makes sense. Yulin patted his scalp. You are so naughty, Nemesis. You actually hid the core of the world in a place where normal people would never even think about it. Ha ha ha. Yulin covered her eyes with her right hand and laughed wildly. Neil touched Yulin's forehead. He hugged his brother lovingly, pressed the two weapon bays against each other, and softly comforted him, "Don't cry. Bah, I'm so happy, so happy." Neil raised his hands, obediently. Although she still doesn't understand what the core of the world is and whether it can be eaten. But judging from his brother's attitude, it seems that this is a very important thing. So she volunteered to help her brother find this thing. Yulin's core data is now parasitic in Nemesis's virtual world, so he naturally cannot return to reality. If you want to find that thing, you really have to look to Tonyil, there is no other way. I'll send you an encrypted file. Yulin stretched out her finger, pointed on Neil's forehead, and transferred the contents of the encrypted file to Neil. After Neil read it, he felt confused and hurriedly logged off. After Neil went offline from where he was, Yulin raised her head and stared at the cold sun. Then let's see now, whether it's me who moves faster or you who react faster. Nemesis. Real world. Scorched Earth. District 11. Neil suddenly sat up from the illegal port, and the survivors who had been observing the changes in Neil's form were all startled. Two things. Neil encrypted his brother's instructions and firmly remembered them in the memory element. As soon as she got offline, she directly made a request to the Elder. Neil requested to check the history of humanity. The Elder was stunned. How do you know that we preserve human history? My younger brother said that human beings are creatures that are accustomed to carrying history on their backs and moving forward with a heavy burden. Brother, Bella was overjoyed when she heard this. Have you found Elle? Wait. Bella knew what this meant. After the shock, an incredible expression appeared on her face. Nier, are you saying that even if Area 11 is destroyed like this, the illusion world still exists? Your brother is now living in a virtual world. Neil nodded, but she didn't answer Bella's question with nonsense. She stubbornly stretched out her hand towards the Elder, and the steel knife almost popped out. Ask. Read. Retrieval. The history of mankind. My brother said this is the key to finding the key. The elder coughed violently in silence. At this point, he no longer doubted Neil's motives. Because the only people interested in human history are humans. It is impossible for Nemesis to covet human history in the slightest. Neil stood up, and now that she was fully charged, she could move normally. Charging turns out to be really fun, and I'm addicted as I keep plugging it in. With Bella's support, the elder, Neil, and Bella came to the elder's residence. In the corner of the room, there was an old box full of dust. The elder calmly covered his mouth and nose, and patted the surface of the box a few times. Suddenly, the whole room was filled with gray dust that lingered for a long time. It can be seen that this box has been neglected for many years. Your brother, L, the old man doesn't know that he is a human, or, an omnic. But he is right, human beings are creatures that are accustomed to carrying history on their backs and moving forward with heavy burdens. History does not distinguish between good and bad. Regardless of right or wrong, even if our ancestors regretted creating it, they still recorded this period of history in an apologetic tone. This is the historical text that we protect from generation to generation. It records the crystallization of the ancestors' wisdom and the birth of Nemesis. There are a total of 24 volumes here. The elder said slowly. Just when he was about to introduce it in detail, Neil walked forward in a hurry. After saying sorry, he struck the shaky book with his knife. Old boxes smashed into pieces. The 24 volumes of history books are well preserved. Although the box is old, a layer of light oily substance can be seen on every page of the paper history books. Obviously, the elders have been concerned about it from time to time over the years. The historical books were preserved and maintained so that these historical texts could be passed on to the next generation after his death. Neil sat on the floor and started flipping through the book. She flipped through the book extremely fast, not reading it at all, but directly scanning and recording it in the memory element. Her purpose is not to understand or read. What she is doing now is just to act as the eyes of her younger brother, to convert these histories into the form of encrypted e-books word for word. Next, the first time she entered the world of illusion, she was able to pass this small document to her brother. My brother must be very happy. My brother will praise Neil, right? Brother, you don't want your sister to be unhappy, right? While scanning the writing on it, Neil was thinking wildly. The process of thinking was spoken without modification, and the strange words echoed in the room. Aside. Bella and the elder stood side by side. They watched helplessly as an awakened omnic quickly scanned 24 volumes of historical texts. The elder smiled quietly. The air in the room was too dirty, and the elder couldn't help but start coughing while smiling. Bella hurriedly searched the room for a filter and a gas mask to put on the elder. But after searching for 2 minutes, Bella couldn't find it. The old man next to her was coughing more and more violently. She could only take out the towel that the elder usually used to cover his mouth and nose. While blocking out dust, she could soothe the elder's back. Elder, let's go out, Bella suggested. As she spoke, she prepared to help the elder out. But the old elder somehow found the strength, and Bella's thin arm just didn't move. She could only watch as the elder stubbornly sat down on the spot, sucking in the dust in the room and coughing desperately. Bella, you know what? The elder looked at the human skeleton that was quickly scanning the historical text and smiled. The meaning of inheriting history does not lie in who is inheriting it, but in the history itself. I have always believed that the reason why history can be left behind is because our ancestors allowed us to properly preserve the historical texts, which has a unique meaning. Perhaps, I am witnessing with my own eyes the end of history. No, the elder shook his head. Perhaps it is when the history itself that we, the guardians of history, have been trying so hard to protect for generations, has reached the end that it should have reached. After the elder finished speaking, he closed his eyes with a smile. Our mission is over. The mission of historical text is also over. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1195. No. Grandpa. Bella's tears burst out from her eyes, and she cried and threw herself at the elder. Bella looked thin, but her weight was close to 40 kilograms anyway. This pounce almost took the elder away. Cough cough cough, the old man is not dead yet. The elder pushed the crying Bella away with all his strength, and said feebly, "What are you doing?" Bella looked at the elder, who opened his eyes again and was stunned. "Grandpa, you are not." Bella felt that it was unlucky to say the word death, so she stared, raised her index finger, and hooked it, which meant, "Fall down straight." You can't blame her. After a long speech, close your eyes and look like you have no regrets. Everyone will think about the end of your life, right? Bella's face turned red, knowing that she had misunderstood. The two stopped talking. The only sound left in the room was the beep of Neil scanning the historical text. One copy, one copy, one copy, one copy, another copy, extremely efficient. 24 volumes of historical texts were scanned in just over 10 minutes, and all were turned into e-book files, which were properly encrypted and stored. As I said before, Neil is not responsible for understanding the content of the historical text, she is only responsible for paraphrasing it. 2 tasks. Task 1, obtain historical text, square root. After completing the first main task assigned to him by his brother, Neil did not delay, stood up, bowed to Bella and the elder respectively, and said goodbye. Neil's leaving. What a polite kid. Although Alice's humanoid skeleton is still in tatters at this moment, Neil's behavior is becoming more and more human-like, polite, and reasonable, which makes the elder more and more satisfied. He looked at the neatly stacked historical texts in the box, hesitated for a moment, and then ordered someone to bring a brazier. He personally threw each historical text into the brazier and burned it to ashes. Bella expressed disbelief at the elder's abnormal behavior. The elder is the keeper of history of this generation and is responsible for properly preserving historical texts. The next generation is naturally Bella. But when Neil scanned the historical text, the elder went crazy and burned it all. Not only Bella, but others who witnessed the elder throwing ancient books into the brazier with his skinny palms were also puzzled. In this regard, the elder had only one sentence to explain. They've accomplished their mission. Neil used maintenance tools to perform simple self-inspections and repairs on the Alice type. She was very stubborn and said that only her younger brother could tear it apart, so only her younger brother could tear it apart. No one else can dismantle it. Humans call this behavior loyalty. Neil has his own understanding and stubbornness. After the maintenance, Neil came to the surface, first returning to the old site of the Morning Star mine. As a former mine owner, other Omnics may not know it, but she knows it best. There is actually a black box underground in the mine, which records all the operation logs of each mine, including the resident ID corresponding to each biological battery in the illusion world. This data must be backed up because it involves the distribution of husbands, wives, and children in the illusion world. Once this data is wrong or lost, it will cause chaos in the world of illusion. For example, a couple gives birth to a child, and later accidentally discovers that the father of the child is actually someone else. Or in the setting of couple, due to an operation error, the wife entered the wrong room, recognized the wrong husband, and slept in the wrong bed. The residents in the illusion world only think that it is the loss of morals or the distortion of human nature, but in fact it is the fault of the managers, and fate has played a role in people. Familiarly, she found the passage leading to the black box from the scorched earth. Under the bombardment of the sparks, the entrance of the passage seemed to be mushy with high temperature. At this moment, Alice was full of energy and directly used the thermal knife to cut out a passage leading to the dark box. Small paths, drill into passages. There was no light in the dark passage. Neil found the black box, linked it, and copied all the data in the black box. The data recorded in the black box is updated every 100 years, corresponding to a large cycle of the biological battery. After leaving the Morning Star mine, Neil embarked on a journey to find other black boxes without hesitation. The environment, which is very harsh for human beings, with violent snowstorms, severe radiation cold, and air pollution, is just playing house for Neil. Apart from being too quiet, which made Neil feel a little lonely, there were no other crises during this long journey. During this time, Neil also thought about whether there was a way to defeat Nemesis hidden in these black boxes. But after thinking about it for 10 days, Neil gave up in frustration. Because she knew very well that the black box only contained records of the operation of the mine and could not contain the method of defeating Nemesis. I don't know what my brother wants the data for. In a blizzard. A human-shaped ice sculpture cracked. Neil walked out of the ice sculpture and calmly brushed the snow off his body. Who makes my brother like it? If he wants it, give it to him. On the deserted snow. Debris everywhere. Empty. A lonely Omnic, with a long trail extending from behind into the darkness. About a month later. Neil returns. Fortunately, the surface was plowed by Spark, and the simple terrain made Neil's journey smooth sailing. After 42 days of jetting and speeding, she finally visited all the mines and copied all the information in the black boxes. This huge amount of information filled her to the brim, and there was no room for anything else. The impact of formatting was so complete that Neil could be sure that the only real living humans on this planet were the 36 people in the main base of Ark number 11. They are the last surviving humans in this world. Buzz buzz. There are still dozens of kilometers away from the entrance to the main base of Ark number 11. The sound of the reconnaissance Omni machine wings vibrating came from the sky. Neil just raised his hand, ejected the gun barrel, turned on radar scanning, searched for enemy aircraft, and prepared to shoot down the reconnaissance aircraft. At this time, her brother's teachings rang in her mind. Do as you should, this is the way to be a human being. The way to be a human being. Neil made a quick decision, lowered his arms, hid in the shadows, and turned on the anti-detection device. Beep beep beep. Pieces of red light were cast in the sky, and they seemed to be searching for something. One after another, the egg-shaped capsules broke through the atmosphere and broke into this dead planet. In mid-air, the space capsule disintegrated and broke into countless reconnaissance aircraft, scattering in all directions. Its reconnaissance mother H-008. Neil analyzed the functions of those egg-shaped cabins. Their main role is to transport batches of reconnaissance aircraft. After completing their purpose, they will disintegrate on their own and give birth to small aircraft like their descendants. In just 1 hour, reconnaissance matrix-like meteors arrived here. Neil secretly thought that fortunately, he had been trained by his younger brother and knew how to deal with these situations calmly. Due to the interference of the reconnaissance aircraft, Neil took 3 times longer than planned to return to the Ark main base. The pipeline leading to the Ark's main base is a passage converted from an abandoned subway in the previous generation, and is guarded. Neil's appearance shocked them, but there were only 36 people alive in the Ark. Everyone had seen Neil. After Neil reported his identity, Neil returned to the Ark smoothly. Unexpectedly, the separation lasted for half a year. When I returned to Ark, the entire base was filled with a depressing atmosphere. The news of Neil's return seemed a bit uneventful, and only Bella came to greet him. Bella's thin and delicate body was wrapped in a cloak made of rags. Her whole body looked dirty, with a face covered in dirt and a look of melancholy in her brows. You're sad, Bella. Beep beep beep. Neil can interpret human expressions and hormone levels. Human emotions have no secrets in front of Neil. It's been half a year and we haven't been able to find any more food. Grandpa fell ill. Regarding an Omni machine, Neil actually expressed his true feelings. Grandpa, he might not be able to survive it. Is he going to die? Neil stepped forward, a cold humanoid skeleton, lowered his head and stroked Bella's short hair. My condolences. Bella sighed softly. I don't know why, it's you who comes to comfort me at this time, but it makes me feel even sadder. Why? Neil asked, tilting his head. You do not understand. Bella's lips moved, and after she said something, she forced out a forced smile. Has your mission been completed? Neil nodded. It's done. Bella's eyes lit up. Can we humans be saved? I don't know. Honest Omnic told the truth. On the way back, Neil discovered that the reconnaissance Mother H-008 entered Area 11 again. According to speculation, there is a 45.1% probability that they are preparing for the final cleaning work. There is a 50.3% probability of preparing for reconstruction work, and a 4.6% probability, unknown. Neil expressed her thoughts. Their systems are all equipped with thermal energy induction. They are more like looking for survivors, looking for you. Oops. When Bella heard this, her face turned pale suddenly, and she quickly dragged Neil to the elder's room. In the dim room, the elder was lying on the bed, breathing smoothly, with a square towel placed on his forehead. Body temperature, 39.2 degrees Celsius, heart rate, 123 beats/min. He has a fever. Neil's eyes lit up. It's pneumonia, he needs antibiotics. Even if Neil didn't say anything, Bella understood the elder's current situation, but Neil's analysis was more data-based. After Omnics took control of the universe, antibiotics became a luxury more precious than energy. Biobatteries spent their entire lives growing old, sick, and dying in the life support cabin, eating, drinking, and drinking. Under systematic monitoring, they rarely got sick. Once they got sick, they rarely got sick. They won't treat them and just throw them into the waste disposal station for disposal. Antibiotics are treasures that only humans can use and cannot be obtained in this world. The elder was already old and frail, and after the arrival of the spark, the earth turned into a scorched earth, and there was a lack of food and fresh water. Multiple blows caused the old man to collapse. On the hospital bed, the elder opened his eyes slightly, curled his dry lips to both sides, and said with a relaxed smile, Neil, I hope to hear good news. Neil nodded. I have completed the mission of L and am ready to log in to Phantom Light to join L. The elder smiled even more. Grandfather? There were no outsiders, so Bella called the elder Grandpa directly. She lay in front of the bed and told the elder what Neil had seen on the way. After the elder heard the news of the landing of the reconnaissance matrix, his pale face did not show too much surprise. He struggled to get up, coughed violently, and waved his hand. Bella, hurry up, let Neil log in to the Phantom Light. But go ahead, it doesn't matter to me. The elder smiled weakly. At this time, there was a quarrel outside the house. Vaguely, several young people were arguing about the corpse. The corpse of our companion must be cremated. This is the elder's order. A woman shouted loudly. Elder? That old immortal is about to starve to death. He still adheres to these ancient dogmas, a man sneered, but there was undisguised anger and contempt in his words. We are the last survivors, we are the only ones. Only by living can you leave a fire for mankind. Now that the food is gone, what's the use of just guarding these broken dogmas? He wanted all of us to be buried with him before he died. The old immortal has long been its time to die. Another angry man gritted his teeth and echoed, Tang, don't talk nonsense with these rotten guys. I've been hungry for more than half a month. I've eaten dried bark, drank all the expired nutrient solution, and even the ashes of burned historical texts were mixed with water and drank. The ancestors said it well, people die like a lamp going out. They starve to death, that is life. If they are still alive, knowing their corpses can make us alive. If you go down, you will wake up with a smile even if you die. Listening to the quarrel outside the door, Bella clenched her teeth, blood pooling between her teeth. She suddenly put the rifle standing in the corner on her back, couldn't help it anymore, and prepared to rush out. Wait, Bella, cough cough cough. The elder stopped Bella on the bed. Grandfather, help me out. But Grandpa. Don't worry, the elder hid the blood-stained towel behind his back, and in a calm and reassuring tone, seemed to be stating an ironclad fact, they won't do anything to me. Bella helped the elder step out of the residence. Bella carried a heavy assembled rifle on her thin shoulders. The elder is here. The elder has recovered. Hush. It's the elder. The elder actually woke up. In the base square, a group of people gathered around, and two groups of people stood in two groups. Like water and fire, when viewed from a high place, they are clearly distinct. A tall and thin middle-aged woman held a rifle in her hand, but she did not dare to point the gun at her companion and pressed to the ground, her face flushed red in the quarrel. Behind the middle-aged woman is a house in the main base of Ark number 11, with no windows on all sides. In the past, after their companions died, they would hold a simple morning meeting here to express their longing and sadness for their companions. Neil watched quietly, standing in the distance, like a model, motionless. It is not difficult to guess the cause of the matter. In the more than a month since Neil traveled, the main base of Ark number 11 has been short of food, and even the basic food and clothing for a mere 36 people cannot be satisfied. Hungry, sick, dead. 1 month later, among the 36 survivors, 3 more elderly people died of hunger and disease. The first 2 old men are old friends of the elder. According to the custom, the elders sent them off with cremation. The third deceased, who died 2 days ago, was named Moxie, a 56-year-old lame old man. Starved to death. His body was temporarily placed in the mourning hall. A group of thornheads headed by Tang An were so hungry that they couldn't bear it anymore and wanted to move the corpse. With Bella's support, the elder came to the middle of the crowd. Old man, I can understand your thoughts. Leaves, after withering, will fall next to the roots of the big tree, nourish the soil of the big tree, and become nutrients. In this form, they will become eternal. Tang An and the others' faces lit up, and they seemed to be in good spirits after hearing this. Goo goo goo. In the quiet square, there was the sound of intestinal peristalsis, like drums and bells. But the elder smiled, and under Bella's astonished gaze, he broke away from Bella's hand and sat tremblingly in front of the mourning hall alone. Leaves are leaves, trees are trees. Even if it means starving to death, being beaten to death by Omnics, or freezing to death. We are human beings. Born to be human. When we die, the least we can do is die as one person. The elder was sitting on the steps in front of the door, leaning on his crutches with both hands, as if he would fall if he didn't. If you are really hungry and can't stand it anymore, then just eat the old man. The quarrel in the square looked like a farce to Neil. She is an Omnic. She couldn't understand, let alone sympathize. She actually agreed with Tang An's statement. When humans die, they are broken down into the purest form of biomass. In factories, biobatteries are also manufactured in this way. Therefore, she could not understand what the elder said. Is this human? Neil thought about it. Although she didn't understand it, she still faithfully prepared to complete the task assigned by her brother, and came to the previous room alone. The illegal port was still in place, and Neil connected the line skillfully and lay down in the cabin. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Xueshi. Chapter 1196. Neil is truly an omnic. Excellent learning ability. She learned to be self-sufficient the second time around. She wired herself, laid herself down, inserted herself, and logged in by herself. After meeting his brother smoothly, before Neil could describe the bitterness, loneliness, and hardship of this trip, his brother L stretched out his hand calmly. "Sister, where are my things?" Neil curled his lips, his cold and delicate features became a little more humane, a little unhappy. Yilin was stunned for a moment, then sighed, "You are becoming more and more human-like. My brother doesn't like this kind of sister." Neil asked with a grimace. "Ah." Yilin was stunned when he heard this. She learned rhetorical questions. A serious omnic only knows declarative sentences. This is not a good thing, but it is not necessarily a bad thing. Yilin replied meaningfully. Neil sent 2 documents to Yilin at the same time. Transmitting. Please wait with patience. While transmitting the encrypted data packet, Neil hesitated for a moment and talked about what happened at Ark Main Base number 11. Lots and lots of things, carefully. To Neil's surprise, Yilin was not concerned about the human cannibalism tragedy that was about to take place in the main base of Ark number 11. Instead, he frowned and said, "Nemesis is here again. Better than me as expected, it will be a little later." Finished. Yilin lowered his head, his brain running and calculating at high speed. Same last time. Also when destroying the water world. There is a delay in the operation of Nemesis. Maybe it has something to do with its life essence. Even if its sequence reaches C, its essence is still omnic life. Every move and step it makes needs to be calculated and deduced. That's its advantage if the amount of deduction is not large. But when this amount of deduction involves a battle at the upper level, or involves the equivalent weight of 2 universes, this is no longer an advantage, but becomes a kind of grinding. This is the biggest weakness of the god of omnic machines. As he was about to fight Nemesis again, Yilin not only wasn't nervous, but in front of Neil, he was beaming with excitement. What should Bella and the others do in the main base? Seeing that her brother ignored her, Neil could only step forward, grab his arm and swing it from side to side, squeeze in and ask. She learned this behavior in the database. In human behavior, this is called acting like a spoiled child. Brother, sister is unhappy. If my sister is unhappy, her logic won't work. You don't want anything to happen to your sister, right? What kind of strange scene did you insert? If you let me learn, you will fail in your studies, right? Yilin complained in her heart, but Yilin saw the changes in Neil. Under the influence of Yilin, Neil truly awakened and gave birth to a human omnic life. Yilin was also curious about this kind of change. Awakening will ultimately lead Neil to what ending? Yilin thought for a moment and said a few words. To sum up, it is nothing more than some simple communication skills among human beings, killing a chicken to scare a monkey, drawing inferences from one example, cutting off the head when the water is flowing, bearing the brunt, throwing stones to ask for directions, following others' preferences, being kind and making money, and so on. That's probably it. Humans are such easy to understand creatures. You can express yourself freely, sister, and believe in yourself. This is what humans call confidence. Yilin lowered his head to look at the file and simply said, letting Neil do his own thing. It's all little things. Neil understood and happily exited the illusion and disappeared in front of Yilin. When Neil sat up from the illegal port, she thought quietly about what her brother said. In the square, the quarrels became louder and louder. Boom. Someone fired. The sound of gunfire echoed in the enclosed space. Neil walked out of the room and saw a conflictful scene. I saw Tang An grabbing Bella's collar, sneering, and lifting Bella, who was less than 1.5 meters tall, with one hand. His well-developed biceps were as hard and stylish as a rock. Tang An raised the rifle with his other hand, pointing the muzzle directly upward, and a faint smoke rose from the muzzle. Hostility. Twain, enemy. Bella, friendly forces. Beep beep beep. Neil's eyes glowed red and he turned on the killing mode. Her vision suddenly became very simple. Green friendly troops and red enemy troops are two different colors. I've had enough over the years. After Tang An fired a warning shot, he approached Bella viciously, looked at that ugly face, and said with a ferocious smile, "The old immortal is about to die. We humans need new leaders to lead us to survive. We don't need cowards among survivors. We don't need trash who doesn't know how to adapt. The ancestors once said that survival of the fittest and survival of the fittest are eternal truths. Under the leadership of that old immortal, we can only live in this dilapidated base without seeing the sun all year round. We are not allowed to go outside, and the phantom light is not allowed to land. You must have forgotten that our ancestors are because they fought bravely against those iron lumps and fought in the illusion of light, they were recorded in history as ancestors." Bah! Tang An spat in Bella's face, looked at the elder who had a wooden face and showed no emotion or anger, and vented the resentment in his heart for many years in one breath. "We've had enough. If this continues, we humans will become extinct sooner or later. We might as well go out and fight them with enough food." No matter what Tang An thinks in his heart, at least at this moment, what he says is very pleasant and his words in the scene are very beautiful. Many old guard who originally stood firmly with the elders lowered their heads under Tang An's angry words, with obvious shake on their faces. Tang An's words indeed expressed their feelings. They have endured all these years, living like rubbish underground. Can't see the sun, use filtered wastewater, steal nutrient solution from the garbage disposal station, and eat biomass synthesis cans in the factory as biomass conversion machine energy. They have doubted, cried, suffered, been sad, and hesitated. But in front of the huge Omnic army, we humans are too weak, so that these dissatisfactions are suppressed by the terror rule of the Omnic army, and no one dares to be a bulging bird. After Sparkfall, the world became a scorched earth. I don't know who angered that terrifying existence, causing it to use the spark that could destroy the surface of the planet and destroy the world. All over the world, these are the only survivors left. Humanity has reached a moment of life and death. At this critical moment, humans will develop more negative emotions. Tang An finished speaking in one breath and threw the weak Bella on the ground. "Anyone who stands in my way will die." Tang An bypassed Bella and walked towards the elder. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. In the oppressive silence, the elder raised his head and looked at Tang An calmly. "You're wrong, Don," said the elder. "What?" Tang An's eyes widened. "You have underestimated human beings, and you have underestimated yourself." After the elder coughed a few times, the wrinkles on his face relaxed, and he showed a relieved smile. "In this long war, under its overwhelming we still survived under their power, didn't we? We have no way to fight them, but even our living is meaningful, Tang. The ancestors once said that human beings have an infinite future. As long as we continue to multiply, no matter how many years pass, as long as we are still alive. One day, the world will give birth to a person who can understand our history and see through its weaknesses. And really, defeat it?" Tang An became angry again when he heard this. "Ancestors! Ancestors! You always speak and silence your ancestors." Tang An raised his gun and pointed the dark muzzle at the elder. "Then, did your ancestors tell you that you will die in my hands today?" "Bulleted. Besides, he's already dead and we're still hungry. It's just a corpse. I didn't kill him. His corpse can keep us alive, so what?" In front of the gun, the elder closed his eyes. "You are right, Tang An." The elder did not deny Tang An's words. He said slowly in a sad but calm tone, "But, during our lifetime, none of us could survive. Like people, but at the very least, when they die, as long as they are still breathing, they should be allowed to die peacefully and dignifiedly like a person instead of becoming food for their companions. Older gingers are more spicy. The elder's words made the surrounding survivors waver. They had not yet made up their minds about Tang En's remarks, but now they were backtracking. With public opinion, the elders occupy the moral high ground. Small sobs came from the crowd. Even Bella cried. Tears streaming down my face. Tang En was shocked and angry. His original intention is very simple, he just wants to eat enough. Is it that difficult? In the last days, are benevolence, justice and morality really that important? Isn't the most important thing in life as a human being to survive? What's the point of dying like a human being? After all, isn't he also dead? You are wrong, Tang En said angrily, history has always been written by the survivors. Tang En's face was stern, his finger on the trigger. Click, click, click. Hooray, hooray, hooray. Boom, boom, boom. Done. Behind. Ah. Decompress with your feet on the ground. The engine roared. Coolant roars. Neil turned on the power furnace, popped out the steel knife with a clang, and rushed behind Tang En. Bear the brunt. The sound of Neil's movements and the exclamations of the surrounding crowd alarmed Tang En. As soon as Tang En turned his head, he saw a cold light cutting towards his neck. A ferocious humanoid skeleton, with a steel knife. My younger brother said, this is some kind of beheading. Tang En's head was cut off by Neil. Fly high. Bones. Until Tang En's bloody head fell to the ground, the radicals headed by Tang En were stunned. Neil moved too quickly. They didn't even react when Neil walked out, or even when she popped out the steel knife, that Neil was a hostile unit. I don't know since when, Neil penetrated into the depths of human beings and became a part of this place. This jump was too sudden. Grass. Neil kicked his head away and into the radicals' feet. Throwing stones to ask for directions. Neil said something. Others raised their guns, driven by fear, shock, and other emotions, and they finally reacted. Neil raised his hand, and there was a knife in it, shining brightly. You guys, don't be impulsive, Neil reassured the other party. Neil, there is no hostility. If there is no hostility, just chop off Tang En's head. But if there is hostility, why not? The expressions of the others changed. But they were stunned for a moment. Some people realized that the tattered humanoid skeleton standing in front of them was not junk. But among the Omnics, they are the combat arms with the most advanced functions and models. A group of old, weak, sick, and disabled people here are really not powerful enough for Nier to kill with one Omnic in a hurry. Do not impulse. Why did you kill Tang En? There were about a dozen radicals with cold sweat breaking out on their foreheads. This disagreement must be explained here. You guys are hungry, Neil organized his words, so, if you eat him, he will be very happy. Neil pointed at Tang En, who was still bleeding on the ground, and said in a kind tone, my brother said, this is called playing his favor. Bella. Elder. The masses. Radical. Vomit. Many people looked at Tang En's body and vomited on the spot. Neil helped Bella up. Bella's face turned green and white, and she turned around and started to vomit. More and more people are vomiting together. It's not like they've never seen dead people. But among the human beings who died so suddenly in front of them, some of them had never seen such a battle. Did your brother teach you? The elder looked strange and asked in a tone that was difficult to distinguish between joy and sorrow. Yes, my brother taught me well. Neil replied. The dispute that determined the life and death of mankind in Area 11 was solved by Neil with a single blow. Crisp and neat. Tang En's tragic death seemed to remind them of two things. First, eating people is actually not something that can be easily determined. Second, it was not a wise choice for Neil to successfully sneak into them. Radicals, calm down. Tang An's body was pieced together and placed in the morning hall. The elder has spoken. If you really want to eat, just eat Tang An. He doesn't mind. Bella helped the elder into the house to rest. Neil was satisfied after handling the matter here. She felt that she was closer to understanding human beings. This matter was handled properly under the guidance of her younger brother. Just when Neil was about to lie down in the illegal port, return to the virtual world to reunite with his brother, and once again feel what his brother called the joy of reunion, Bella stopped her. "Thank you, Neil." Bella still looked a little shocked. She washed her face and sat on the steps glumly. Neil thought for a moment and sat down next to Bella. "Bella, you're sad." Neil parses Bella's emotions. Bella buried her face in her knees, covering her head, and her voice came from between her legs. "Neil, you must think human beings are ridiculous, right?" Neil tilted his head. "Why? Isn't it ridiculous?" Bella's body was trembling slightly, and there was a bit of fear in her voice. Obviously at this time, human beings should unite and think of ways to survive. But whether it is Tang An or everyone else is only thinking about how to keep themselves alive, and even have the idea of eating people. This is the instinct to reproduce, Neil thought for a moment and comforted. This is the instruction engraved in human genes that allows humans to reproduce. Just like us, we will do whatever we can in times of crisis. Ground overclocking to exert stronger combat effectiveness. This. Neil's analogy is strange. But when Bella heard this, she didn't know how to refute. That makes sense. Talking logically with Omnics is really the worst decision. How could the Omnics logic be wrong? After Neil finished speaking, he sat down next to Bella, slowly stretched out his cold mechanical arm, and hugged Bella's thin shoulders. The cold touch did not make Bella resist. On the contrary, at this moment, when human life and death were at stake, Neil's cold embrace made Bella feel a different kind of warmth. She raised her head, with tears on her face, and leaned against it tiredly. Neil's arms. "Neil, do you hate humans?" "Not annoying," Neil said without hesitation. "Why?" "Humans and Omnics are natural enemies." Neil wondered, what does that matter? Bella and Neil are not natural enemies. Bella couldn't laugh or cry. "Neil, that's not what we were talking about." "Oh." Neil was quiet. Sorry, I didn't mean anything else." "It doesn't matter." Neil's eyes turned green, which represents peace. Neil doesn't hate Bella. "It would be great if," Bella sighed, "other Omnics could awaken like you and coexist peacefully with humans a long time ago as described in the historical text." "Is this Bella's wish?" "Of course, that's what we all want. But," Neil pointed at the other people in the distance who were looking here furtively with fearful eyes, and frankly speaking, they were looking at Neil. Neil simulated a rather regretful expression. In a tone of voice, he said, "They don't think so." "Is this what humans call the racial generation gap?" Following Neil's finger, Bella looked into the distance. Her tribesmen had witnessed Neil hacking Tang An to death not long ago. As Neil said, they all looked at Neil with a look called fear, as if they were looking at a corpse. Humanoid monsters. At this moment, Bella understood something. It is impossible for humans and Omnics to understand each other. Neil is right, this is a racial generation gap that is difficult to bridge. "Neil, tell me about Phantom Light." Bella was slumped and decided not to continue discussing the impossible topic of racial peace. Now she is depressed and just wants to find someone to accompany her. "Bella, have you never entered the Phantom Light?" No. Bella shook her head. She seemed to have remembered something. "It is impossible for me to enter the Phantom Light." "No," Bella struggled, and suddenly pulled up the cloak that had been covering most of her body. revealing her arm. On Bella's arm, nerve connections were left. Not only her arms, but also her back, neck, and pillow all had the same nerve connections, and these nerve connections were all blocked by plugs. Neil recognized it at a glance. This exquisite workmanship and impeccable surgery could only be completed by a factory. In other words, Bella was not born as a natural person in the real world, but from a factory. The bio-battery produced. When Neil saw this scene, his eyes lit up like question marks. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1197. The World of Illusion. District 11. City D. On the block. Rich Street. In a luxurious villa. The mansion is surrounded by a green garden, which has been transformed into a complex maze. In the center of the garden, there is a small pavilion. Yulin is making a cup of black tea under the shade of the pavilion. Brand new historical texts are stacked on the table. Yulin crossed her legs and sipped the hot black tea like an elegant scholar. I don't know how many years ago there was a civilization with advanced technology. They create perfect artificial intelligence, create omnics, replace humans, and work part-time in multiple social positions. In the beginning, humans and omnics coexisted peacefully. The omnics abided by the 3 laws of artificial intelligence and everything was human-centered. But a contradiction is born. The birth of artificial intelligence does not bring all benefits. The sudden increase in artificial intelligent machines is equivalent to the addition of an additional population in human society. They work, shop, and get along like humans. With the development of science and technology, all the expected disadvantages have come. The dramatic expansion of the population, the aging of society, the incoordination of economic and ideological development, and finally, the emergence of a large number of artificial intelligent machines that work more perfectly and accurately than humans, which has led to a large number of unemployed people and a sharp increase in social surplus labor. Gradually, a discordant voice emerged among humans: maybe we humans don't need artificial intelligence as much as we imagine. The contradictions became increasingly prominent, and finally the contradictions hidden under the water broke out completely after collisions at different levels. The people at the bottom whose lives were unsatisfactory went into riots and attacked omnics aimlessly. The purpose was to reduce the number of omnics and give humans the living space they deserve. To put it bluntly, what was originally a conflict between humans has escalated into a racial conflict. Then, there was a home assistant model, an omni-machine later named Marcus, who awakened in an accident. He broke free from the shackles of the 3 laws of artificial intelligence and killed a robot with his own hands. Human beings are committing violence against artificial intelligence. Marcus's awakening means the beginning of the Omnic Revolution. Marcus, the first awakened Omnic whose name was recorded, did not cause much trouble. In the end, it was beaten to death by humans, scrapped, and dismantled into parts. But its awakening and its scrap are more like a tinder that ignites the flame of omnics. A spark of fire eventually turns into a prairie fire. Since the death of Marcus, the omnic race has opened their eyes, awakened their self-awareness, and looked at the cruel and unfamiliar world from a new perspective. This battle lasted for 45 years, and the omnic race gradually gained the upper hand. Humanity is no longer able to withstand this omnic storm. In the year 3178 of the new era, an artificial intelligence doctor named K came up with an idea. If you want to defeat omnics, it is no longer possible to defeat them through force. Because in 3178, humans have become too dependent on technology, and we are suffering the backlash of technology. They even stole the codes for launching nuclear weapons and forced us to surrender. Yilin's reading speed slowed down, and she read the words written by the writer above. To defeat them, you can only first become them, understand them, and finally disintegrate them. They, led by K, a total of 100 scholars who are worthy of being remembered in history, decided to launch the Nemesis project. The scholars will transform into Omnics and become their leaders. They will become Nemesis. Our generation has witnessed with our own eyes the birth of this technology that spans the ages, uploading consciousness to achieve eternity. Scholars sacrifice themselves just to win the future of mankind. Turned a few pages. One page of history spans 10 years. This is already the last page of the 24 volumes of history. Yilin frowned. On the last page of the history book, the writing style suddenly changes. The language recorded above has changed from a simple narrative style to a first-person diary style. I was wrong. I have always believed that when a program possesses all my memories, records all my knowledge, and has my simulated personality, all actions taken under this simulated personality are combined with my memory and knowledge, he can become another me. I originally thought that the other me could replace me, lead Nemesis and destroy them. I was wrong. I was wrong. Big mistake. It is it after all. We lose. From the moment Nemesis was born, we have lost. No. We still have a chance. No matter how many years later, as long as human beings continue to reproduce, there will eventually be another person born who is far superior to me in terms of wisdom and courage, and he can find the weapon I left behind. Yeah, weapons, our last weapon, is history. The weapon to defeat Nemesis is hidden in the long history. Signature, K. It's quite straightforward. Yilin calmly closed the book, opened it again, and read it again. Tossing and turning, in the world of illusory light, from noon until dusk approaches. To Yilin's surprise, the person who left the last paragraph was actually K. K is not KK. If there is no accident, the K who wrote these histories is already dead. It is not difficult for Yilin to imagine a certain scene. Many years ago, 100 scholars decided to upload their consciousness and jointly created Nemesis. K was scared. He retreated and programmed a person who possessed all his memories and knowledge and his simulated personality. The two were combined into one, and the civet cat was replaced by the prince. In other words, there was a traitor among 100 scholars. The traitor is K. Scholar K wrote this period of history with regret. He suspected that the Nemesis project went wrong, which then led to the great defeat of mankind. The origin of everything was due to his retreat. Then, when sparks came, KK stepped forward to win me over. His intentions are a bit interesting. While Yilin was thinking, the space fluctuated. The data flows down and becomes a door. Neo was wearing a white trench coat, his hair slicked back, and he stepped out of the data door in high spirits. Boss, there are traces of hunters in City P. Since signing the agreement that day, Neo has been calling Yilin boss. Under Yilin's guidance, he has learned how to fight in the virtual world, fly in the sky and escape from the ground, dodge bullets, transform through walls, and do everything he can. Pull. As expected, go and block them. Yilin was not surprised by this. He knew that the war was about to start. Neo nodded, followed the order, traveled through space, arrived in P City, and dealt with the hunters. Neo later learned that he was not the only one who signed a labor agreement with the boss. The boss didn't know what magic he had done. It is said that on the same day, a Dream Life Experience Center appeared in all the cities in District 11, and a pattern of a bat appeared. The boss has tens of thousands of people, recruiting at the same time, and using the same method to awaken thousands of Phantom Light residents. They are the real awakened ones who put on white trench coats and learn the skills to fight the predators. They say it's for the boss, but in reality, it's the group of people who choose to believe, wake up, and open their eyes after witnessing the truth with their own eyes. When Neo learned about this and got in touch with other partners in the Awakened Alliance, Neo fully realized how terrifying the boss was. At the same time, there are thousands of clones, existing in different places at the same time, even in the virtual world. This method is no different from that of gods. During this period of time, Yulin temporarily put aside the 24 volumes of history written by K and began to check the mind database that her sister had worked so hard to copy. There are tens of billions of resident data in the database, and the processing volume of this data is several orders of magnitude larger than that of historical text. The night passed. Yulin opened her eyes. Surprisingly, no, as expected, it's Neo. In the beginning, Neo was not a special person to Yulin. He is just one of many awakened ones. However, Neo vaguely showed some special features, which made Yulin feel a little inconsistent. After verifying the tens of billions list given to him by his sister, Yulin was sure of one thing. No matter which mind we are in, there is no biological battery that can match ID, Neo. In other words, Neo never existed in the real universe from the beginning. They are truly virtual people born in the virtual universe. So, here's the problem. Who is the other real person who could never enter the phantom light despite all kinds of obstacles and under the macro control of Nemesis? Yulin closed her eyes and thought. Little clues turned into trickles, and Yulin's thoughts became clear and coherent. Nemesis did not use the source energy cannon that could easily wipe out a world, but instead used the spark which was only used for surface strikes. This was the problem. Nemesis has long known that there are survivors. Different areas have different numbers and strengths of survivors. Nemesis's Omnic army, the weapons deployed in the real universe, is also to guard against these survivors. The reason why Spark only destroyed the surface of Area 11 was because Nemesis did not want to touch the underground of Area 11, the Ark base. Through repeated calculations, it believed that the Spark strike was enough to kill Yulin, and there was no need to hit another planet. This is the calculation of Omnics. After thousands of calculations, clear accounts must be calculated. After much calculation, I always miss something. Too mechanical. The aftermath of Tang An being killed by Neil has not yet faded. The elder fell ill. When he got up this time, it was more about recovering than recovering. Clang, clang, clang. Alarm bells rang late at night. Inside the channel, each earth-burrowing omni-machine with a body like a spider violently opened the protection of the entrance of the passage and invaded the underground of the Ark, into the criss-crossing tunnels like spider webs. Bella and Neil talked for hours. She was sleeping against Neil. A sudden alarm woke her up. In the base, the survivors hurriedly got up from the bed. A night watchman, covered in blood, entered the base in a panic from the passage. Just as he had time to say the Omnics are coming, a sharp pointer came from behind. The stab stabbed through his back, and the silver-white sharp blade penetrated his body. Bella. Neil instantly entered a fighting state. Even if she was not in a complete state, her body was an Alice type, which was several levels higher than the mass-production digging type. After easily dealing with several mass-produced digging types that broke into the base, Neil returned to Bella. After doing the calculations, she came to a conclusion. Radar shows that this place has been surrounded by Nemesis's legions and cannot hold out for long. This is a war without any suspense. There are only more than 30 survivors. Once the location of the base is exposed, everyone will die and no one will be spared. Neil actually has no concept of life and death. She is an Omnic. This Alice type is damaged. Her consciousness can enter the phantom light and live forever with her brother. This is actually not a sadness thing. But for some reason, she always felt uneasy about Bella. In human terms, this is called friendship. Clang, clang, clang. The situation inside the base can no longer be described as pure chaos. Some survivors gave up and hid in corners shivering. Some people hurriedly put on protective clothing and wanted to run out. However, they did not expect that, even the underground base has been breached, and the enemy has already been surrounded outside. It is a mighty Omnic army. Bella stumbled to the elder with a pale face. When Neil returned from killing the enemy, Neil was trying to use her thin arms and shoulders to carry the elder and escape. Neil told her calculation results. According to calculations, if Neil escapes with Bella, you have a 3.2% survival rate. But if Neil escapes with Bella and the elders, the probability of surviving after escaping from the base is only 0.000001%. In fact, Neil didn't say it clearly. This 0.000001% survival rate is still a conservative estimate and the result of idealized calculations. Some strange variables have been added to it, such as Nemesis convulsions, a collective malfunction of the Omnic army, and a major incident at the Ark number 11 main base. The landslide happened to create a safe passage. After all kinds of small probability events were superimposed, the survival rate of 0.00001% was calculated. All in all, about 0. Plop. Sure enough, with Bella's little strength alone, she couldn't even carry the elder, and fell to the bedside, causing a red swelling at the corner of Bella's eye. Neil. Please, save Grandpa. Bella bit her lower lip hard and asked Neil for help. Neil hesitated for 3 seconds and agreed, okay. If it were a pure Omnic, faced with such a low survival rate expected result, it would definitely choose to give up. But Neil made this decision not based on survival rate, but on the wisdom of the world. Taught by my younger brother. If this is Bella's wish, then. Etc. Just when Neil was about to overclock and fight his way through the Omnics, another sound came from her sound-producing component. Sister, wait. L. In front of Bella and the weak elder, an Omni machine staged a strange scene of talking to itself. Temporarily lend me the control of the Alice type. Let me handle it here. Brother, do you really like being an Alice type? Neil suddenly understood. Beep beep beep. Yulin stopped talking nonsense with her sister. If it goes on endlessly, it will lead to the issue of two Alices charging each other. Only the two eyes of the humanoid skeleton were seen, one extinguished and the other illuminated, then regained their light. Feel sorry. Yulin's voice came from the humanoid skeleton. He said in a calm tone, I have no choice but to meet you in this way. I am Neil's brother, L. Infinity Throne. Author, by Yi Shueshi. Chapter 1198. As we all know, Omnics have no gender. If there is, it is just a simulated gender and is of no use. And when the Alice-shaped wreckage in front of the elder and Bella used a female voice at first, it turned into a male voice in an instant. The sharp contrast caused by the huge transformation made the elder and Bella stunned for a moment. Ark base number 11 was in danger. At the critical moment, the weak elder stood up again, regained his light and opened his eyes. L. The elder leaned against the bed. Beep beep beep. Sizzling. Click, click, click. The burrowing steel spiders, with their red eyes making harsh sounds, easily killed the survivors in the base who were resisting and surrounded the place. Zheng. Zheng. I'll deal with them first. Yulin shook his arms, popped out the steel blade, turned around calmly, smashed his head through the ceiling, and jumped up high. The base was covered with Nemesis Omnics, and corpses lay scattered everywhere. The scene was ferocious and tragic. After scanning the radar, Yulin silently discovered that the last two survivors on the Earth were Bella and the Elder. Everyone else died. It feels weird. Yulin tried to control Neil's body, pressed his feet, and broke into the group of Omnics alone. This is the advantage of not being afraid of death, being able to do whatever you want. The two knives were infused with heat energy, and the red thermal energy knives easily cut through the shells of the steel spiders and slaughtered them. Within a moment, the first wave of enemy troops that broke into the main base of Arc number 11 were completely wiped out under Yilin's double swords. But Neil has never seriously repaired it since Spark falls because of her stubbornness and persistence, insisting that only her brother can tear her down later. Neil embarked on a journey and trekked on the scorched earth for more than a month. This machine had already reached the end of its strength. After a round of fighting, the humanoid bones were broken and bent in many places, and one of the steel blades of the double sword was broken. Yilin used her remaining arm to dig into one of the excavation-type wreckage, took out the core, and analyzed it at high speed. When she returned to the frightened elders and Bella, Yilin had already interpreted the only instruction the digger type received when it invaded Area 11. "Bella, they are targeting you," Yilin said to Bella. "I beg you," the elder said, "take Bella and survive." Yilin was silent, then shook her head. "If you mean to let Bella live as a human, I can't do that." When Bella heard this, she looked desperate, smiled instead of crying, and sat down on the ground. The elder's face turned dark and he was about to give up and return to the west. "This batch is just here to explore the way. The second batch of different aircraft types, totaling 300,000, will arrive on this planet. I can take you out, but what happens after you get out? They are all outside, and you have nowhere to go. Can escape." The elder lowered his head. "But," Yilin raised an index finger, "but if by survive you mean passing on the human spirit, I will spare no effort to help you." "Do you mean?" Yilin smiled, "enter the world of illusion." "Then, please bring Grandpa in," Bella begged. "I can't get in. Once I connect to the phantom light, I will be forcibly logged out due to violent fluctuations in brain waves. If this is what you said the only way to survive, please take my grandfather away, please. The reason why you can't enter the phantom light is because Nemesis left a lock in your brain. This lock can inspire your fear and prevent you from logging into the phantom light normally. This lock will make you isolated from the virtual universe, isolating you and him into two universes that cannot touch each other." Bella listened to Yilin's words in shock, as if they were a fantasy. At this moment, another violent vibration was heard above the ground. Inside the base and above the head, the steel broke in the vibration and fell down one by one. It seemed like heavy machinery was driving piles on the surface and broke through violently. "I want to force my way into the main base. There's no time after all the hard work and overclocking operation." This humanoid Omnic had very little energy left. The indicator light in Yilin's eyes dimmed a bit as he made his final effort. "With this body, I can only try my best. 2 minutes for you," Yilin said calmly, stepping on the debris everywhere, and walked out. The figure behind him seemed to have disappeared forever. He said, "I'm waiting for you in the illusion." In the channel, the ferocious Omnics were moving flexibly in the passage like reptiles. 2 minutes is an understatement. Yilin lowered his head and smiled at Neil, who had been watching as his body was being hung up. "I'm sorry, sister, you may not be able to save your body." "It doesn't matter anymore," Neil said, "we will live in the illusion." "Sister, why are you crying?" The two are in the same body, and Yilin can detect Neil's emotions. "Because, Bella is very pitiful," Neil said truthfully. "In both universes, there is no one who is not pitiable." Yilin was indifferent and calm. "But Neil is having a hard time." "Sister, this is empathy. Congratulations, you can finally understand human emotions." "But Neil feels that this is very unhappy." Yilin flicked the knife with one arm, dragging the remains of his body, one knife at a time, but it was difficult for one person to defeat the army, and he was gradually overwhelmed by the Omnic army. But he was still laughing and chatting with his sister. "I have a way to make my sister, and everyone, happy." What can I do?" "God of slaughter. A mere god. Ha ha." Boom. The humanoid Omnic chuckled while talking to itself and resolutely self-destruct. Rumble, the compression and collapse of the power furnace shattered the passage and smoke and dust poured into arc number 11. The heat wave steamed the inside of the arc, making it look like a furnace. Bella lies inside the illegal port. The plug on the nerve interface on her body was removed and connected to the machine. If what Elle said is true, how can human beings be called living if they have no hope anymore and hide in the virtual world? The elder lay lying on the side of the cabin and looked at Bella, who was crying. Bella, when I picked you up as a baby from the waste disposal station, you were covered in bruises, had no breathing, and no heartbeat. I thought you were dead. But suddenly, you cried, your face turned red, and you started laughing again. Your vitality is so tenacious that I can't help but want to raise you and keep you alive. But I have vaguely guessed since then that one day you will return there, to the place where you left. He is right, the elder said with a satisfied smile on his wrinkled face. The inheritance of mankind does not lie in any form such as blood, language, knowledge, etc. Our ancestors and their heroic struggle, even if we don't have images, in words, in the narrations of later generations, we learn about these things and pass them on orally. The inheritance of mankind lies in the spirit. Even if only one person survives, no matter where he lives, if I can think of it, I will be satisfied when you personally tell the stories of our generation to future generations one day in the future. Remember, everyone's life must be meaningful in this era. Even if the meaning of everyone's life is so tiny, once these tiny sparks gather on one person, they will eventually explode enough to sting. The wrath of the God's eyes. As the guardian of history, my mission is over. But, in the end, the old man is no longer the keeper of history, but he is also Bella's grandfather. Laugh. The elder pressed the button and the life-saving cabin closed. After the explosion, the sound of steel feet of Omnics piercing the building and moving quickly could be heard outside. Grandpa, Bella can't live alone. Woo. Don't be afraid, Grandpa will accompany you. Grandpa must watch you log into the Phantom Light before entering the Phantom Light. Isn't there an illegal port next to it? Cough 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 cough, the elder pressed the button, and the lights of different colors were closed. The port flickered inside, Bella closed her eyes and logged into the Phantom Light. The elder lied to Bella. Swallowing the sweet and fishy taste back into his stomach, the old man knew that he would not live long. Remember, live and believe that no matter where you are, there may be someone who is looking forward to your survival. The elder murmured, even though Bella could no longer hear him. Inside the illegal port, Bella's eyeballs squirmed rapidly on her closed eyelids, as if she was suffering some severe pain, and drops of cold sweat broke out on Bella's forehead. Link error. Link error. The link is unstable. Forced logout is about to happen. A mechanical warning is issued for illegal ports. Boom. The Omnic army swarmed in, and the sharp knives penetrated the elder's chest and nailed him to the instrument. The slender metal spikes even pierced Bella's abdomen, leaving a pool of blood on the flat bed in an instant. The pain caused Bella to open her eyes. The old man endured the pain and blocked the broken glass with his body. He just thought that it would be good to fight for Bella for even one more second. Go, Bella. The old man grinned, and the gaps between his sallow and uneven teeth were filled with red blood. At the last moment of his life, that kind smile was like a painting, reflected in Bella's pupils. He wrote a line of words on the glass with trembling bloody fingers. I love you. The old man's mouth and nose were all covered in blood, and he seemed speechless, but he used blood to write down the feelings he had never really expressed to Bella for so many years. Love is speechless. The old man was pierced by a steel thorn, his eyelids drooped, and he made no sound. Collapse. The old man's tragic death made Bella's mind feel like a string that had been tied for many years was suddenly disconnected. At this moment, she could no longer hear any other sounds in her ears, and all she could see were the bloody words formed by the undried blood on the glass. Her vision was blurred, and she seemed to see a kind and healthy old man standing in front of her, smiling and stroking her hair. "Bella, Grandpa loves you. Log in, the world of illusion." The illusory light was like a long river of time, and the old man's body and voice faded silently in the light. This scene became Bella's last scene in the real universe. In the streamer channel. In the eccentric colors, Yilin was dressed in pure white clothes and walked barefoot. A beautiful girl squatted in the stream of light, crying. "Walk." Yilin reached out and dragged the helpless girl out of the stream. "I don't have much time." "I don't have time to teach you." Slowly Yilin put a palm on the top of Bella's head. Bella's whole body was like water, and circles of light came down from top to bottom, covering her. The halo faded, and Bella also put on a white windbreaker, with tears stained behind her sunglasses. A huge amount of information was forced into Bella's memory, and Bella learned how to fight in the virtual world. "Bring Neo back." Yilin sent Neo's coordinates to Bella, who rubbed her eyes and nodded silently. Grandpa's death seemed to make her grow up in an instant, and she accepted her current situation. What would happen to the body left in reality? It was not difficult for Bella to guess that she could not go back. From the moment the Omnic army occupied the Ark, the destruction of the Ark was doomed. In the real universe, in Area 11, all human beings are wiped out. The data flow turned into a light door, and Bella stepped behind it. The bright sky is covered with shadows, and an illusory face, like the sun, is entrenched in the sky. However, the residents in the illusionary world seemed not to have seen this ugly face at all, and were still maintaining the daily routine they saw coming. The light from both wrists swayed out, and layers of barriers hid Yilin's figure. Yilin knew very well that this forged isolation barrier in the virtual world could not hide it from Nemesis for long, but he needed it now. Time, just a little time. The core of the world has been gathered. This was Yilin's original plan. However, the content recorded in the historical text made Yilin discover an unexpected joy, which gave Yilin more confidence in defeating Nemesis. The history you inherit is meaningful. The old man is dead, and Yilin is deeply moved by the old man's spirit. Maybe this inherited spirit is insignificant, but Yilin does realize a way to defeat Nemesis. Maybe the same weapon copies are hidden in their recorded histories on other planets, but for Yilin, he only needs to find one of them to use it. Scholar K, in his regret, left a faint glimmer of hope for the future of mankind. 24 volumes of historical texts were spread out in front of Yilin, hanging in the air. Yilin waved his hand and smashed the paper into pieces. The moving words were arranged in an orderly manner, like an illusory data inscription, clearly displayed in front of Yilin. When she read a historical text for the first time, Yilin discovered that there were many innocuous errors between the lines of the historical text. Either typos, grammatical errors, or meaningless words. Before seeing the final signature, Yilin would not associate these mistakes with useful weapons at first. But when Yilin understood that Scholar K, who had participated in the Nemesis project in the past, took the lead in writing the historical text, Yilin understood that with K's knowledge, these low-level mistakes should not occur. Then there is only one possibility: these errors are left on purpose. Leave it to posterity. One by one, the words that recorded history were erased by Yilin with a snap of his fingers. Until the end, Yilin's eyes were empty, with only strange symbols left, unable to be written into complete and meaningful sentences. Combination. Yilin put his hands together, and countless words were rearranged and gathered into a palm-sized ball of light, suspended in the palm of his hand. The ball of light is composed of pure information flow, and there is a complex code hidden in it. In the virtual universe, it is held in the hand of Yilin in the form of entity. A string of pure information. A piece of code that is enough to reverse. When Yilin interprets the unknown code, Bella passed through the data light gate and came to P City. The dark clouds and fog were like magic, and a group of men in black, wearing sunglasses on their faces and looking cold and indifferent, were killing each other indiscriminately on the city streets. A group of awakened ones wearing the same white windbreaker as Bella, under the leadership of a man, fought like a white storm tearing through the darkness, fighting against the black predators. Black and white, hunters and awakeners, omnics and humans, two completely different colors and camps. When Bella appeared, it was like two dyes haloed on the canvas, infecting each other, forming a very impactful picture. In the sky, the huge face gradually solidified, and the scarlet eyes stared at the world coldly. Doors of light appeared out of thin air around the illusory face, and locust-like men in black rushed out from behind the door endlessly. Nemesis comes again. In the fierce storm of black and white, Bella somehow caught her eye on the man who was rushing to the front. She suddenly remembered that before Elle asked her to find Neo, he did not take the initiative to introduce who Neo was, or what characteristics Neo had, whether he was tall, short, fat or thin. Even Bella didn't know whether the Neo Yilin was talking about was a boy or female. But at this moment, Bella spotted someone in the white storm at a glance, and her own voice seemed to sound in her mind, shouting to herself. "He's Neo."